Chapter 17:11. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow passed through the cave and entered a spacious tunnel. This tunnel, which was located deep underground, was actually more than 10 zhong high and 3 zhong wide. The ground and the walls on both sides of the tunnel were paved with huge black rocks. They were flat and neat. It was obvious that this passage had been artificially created. The surface of the huge black rocks was covered with the marks of time. It was obvious that it had experienced a long time. Yun Yarrow frowned in confusion and asked, "Strange, the 100-Flower Valley has always been occupied by the Twin Flower Demon and the 10,000 Bone Demon. Why would there be an ancient tunnel deep underground?" Ji Tianxing looked at the end of the tunnel with a serious expression and said, Yarrow, the 10,000 Bone Demon came out from the bottom of the Flower Valley. This tunnel is probably related to it. Also, I can sense that the end of this tunnel is probably a demon's den. There's an extremely strong demon aura coming from it." Yun Yarrow nodded slightly and said, "I can sense it too. There's still the aura of the 10,000 Bone Demon here. It's very likely that it's hiding in its den. Are we still going in?" Ji Tianxing thought for a while and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He said in a low voice, "Damn that 10,000 Bone Demon. It made us so miserable and almost lost our lives. How can we let it go so easily? It's even more impossible for us to escape like this. Alright, then we'll have to be even more careful." Yun Yarrow nodded in agreement with his decision and exhorted. Soon, 15 minutes passed. The two of them walked along the pitch-black stone tunnel for more than 10 miles underground. They took several turns along the way. Finally, the two of them were about to reach the end of the tunnel. There was a straight and wide stone tunnel under their feet. 1,000 zhong in front of them was a pitch-black hall. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow walked side by side. They both held their swords and were on high alert. Yun Yarrow suddenly frowned and her gaze fell on the wall on the right side of the tunnel. She saw a grayish-white skull embedded in the pitch-black stone wall that was 30 zhong above the ground. Judging from its appearance, the skull belonged to a human martial artist. Moreover, it was a middle-aged man. Ji Tianxing observed it carefully for a while and discovered that the bones of the skull had been strengthened, making it comparable to an immortal divinity-level magical treasure. He could basically conclude that the owner of the skull was a human warrior at the primordial soul realm when he was alive. At this moment, Yun Yarrow pointed at the left wall of the tunnel. On the left side of the wall, there was also a skull 3 feet above the ground. The skull belonged to a human warrior at the primordial soul realm. The two skulls were facing each other, and both of them were looking down at the ground. It was quite strange. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow continued to move forward. They discovered that a pair of skulls were embedded in the rock walls on both sides of the passage every 100 feet. Such meticulously arranged skulls made the pitch-black tunnel even more eerie, filled with a strange and terrifying atmosphere. Why inlay skulls on the walls? Could it be some kind of formation or ritual? Maybe the 10,000 skeletal demon deliberately arranged it to show its identity or dignity. The two of them walked along the tunnel for 10,000 feet and discussed secretly with each other. There were exactly 200 skulls embedded in the tunnel that was 10,000 feet long. Fortunately, when the two of them reached the end of the tunnel and stepped into the main hall, the skulls did not move, and there were no anomalies. The main hall was very spacious, with a radius of 1,000 feet, but it was not pitch black. The floor that was paved with black boulders was carved with dense, winding patterns of the Ghost Clan, which seemed to form a great formation. The formation was operating, and the secret runes were also shining with dark red or dazzling purple brilliance. They were constantly flickering, and their brightness was fluctuating. With the brilliance of the patterns of the formation, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow could see that the walls around the main hall were engraved with countless pictures of deities and ghosts. Most of the pictures were of ferocious demons and evil gods. In addition, in the 4 corners of the east, south, west, and north, there were 4 skulls embedded in the walls that were 100 feet above the ground. Those 4 skulls were also the skulls of human martial artists. Although they had been there for thousands of years, they had not turned grayish-white and were still sparkling like jade. Upon closer inspection, Ji Tianxing discovered that every skull had been tempered by lightning, and there were even tiny lightning patterns left on them. These 4 skulls belong to human martial artists in the Tribulation Transcendence realm, and they have experienced at least 5 lightning tribulation. This result made Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow frown. They increasingly felt that this main hall was strange, and there must be some secrets hidden. Fortunately, the 4 skulls were embedded in the walls without moving, and there were no abnormalities. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow ignored them for the time being and continued to observe the situation in the main hall. In the north of the main hall, there was a 90 feet tall black altar on the ground close to the wall. It was unknown what material the altar was made of, but it was inlaid with many demon crystals and blood essence stones, emitting a strange rainbow light. This altar was also very old, and it had been there for at least 1,000 years. At the top of the altar was a blood pool that had a radius of 30 feet. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow checked the area and saw that the sunken blood pool was filled with purplish-black blood. The blood was bubbling and surging. A very pungent smell of blood came from the blood pool and filled the entire main hall. In addition to the bubbling blood, there was also a large ball of 5-colored light floating above the blood pool. Ji Tianxing took a closer look and saw clearly that there were over 100 remnant souls in the water tank-sized ball of light. Some of the remnant souls were ice blue, some were dark red, and some were grayish-white. Every remnant soul represented a martial artist at the essence soul realm and above. However, the hundreds of remnant souls were not only of human martial artists, but also of demon beasts and martial artists of other races. Under the catalysis of the altar's power, the 5-colored ball of light slowly rotated. Every 15 minutes, a dark red stream of air would fly out of the ball of light and rise into the air. Ji Tianxing's gaze followed the stream of air and looked up. He saw a huge blood-red skeleton embedded in the north wall. It was a skeleton troll that was 1,000 feet tall. Its bones were dark red and flowed with red light, as if blood was flowing. The skeleton troll was embedded in the wall and sat on a huge white bone throne. The white bones that were as translucent as jade formed a 20-foot-tall throne. Green, blue, and red gems and crystals were embedded in the throne. This scene was very strange, and there was a sense of horror and majesty. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow were stunned for a moment. They looked at the blood skeleton and sized it up carefully. They saw that the blood skeleton's body was also formed by countless broken bones. Its skeleton and body were almost the same as a human woman's, except that it was more than 100 times larger. In the dark red skull, there was a pair of deeply sunken eye sockets. There was nothing inside. Its hands were placed on the armrests of the white bone throne, but its wrists were tied to the throne by thick bronze chains. Chapter 17:12. The gigantic blood skull sat upright on the white bone throne. A few thick bronze chains firmly tied its limbs and waist, binding it to the throne. Such a strange scene caused Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow to look at each other, and they revealed dense puzzlement. There's a skeletal ogre here too. And it's completely blood-red? Is it the companion of the 10,000 bone devil? Just like the twin flower demon? No, it can't be that simple. If this skeletal ogre is the companion of the 10,000 bone devil, why is it imprisoned on the throne? The two of them looked at each other and secretly communicated with each other through voice transmission. However, at this moment, a dark red stream of air flew out of the 5-colored ball of light above the altar and entered the blood skull's head. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow immediately sensed that the dark red stream of air was strengthening the blood skull and making its aura even stronger. The blood skull seemed to have sensed their presence. Scarlet flames suddenly lit up in its pitch-black, empty eye sockets. The fiercely dancing flames were its eyes. It stared at Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow. Its aura was originally still, as if it was in a deep sleep. Now that it had woken up, it was exuding a powerful, evil aura and releasing an unparalleled, invisible pressure. Not good. It's awake. Ji Tianxing immediately sensed that something was wrong. He pulled Yun Yarrow away from the evil altar and quickly retreated. At the same time, rows of gemstone lamps suddenly lit up on the walls of the hall. The scarlet light immediately illuminated the entire hall. 200 scarlet rays of light also lit up the giant stone passageway outside the main hall. However, they weren't gemstone lamps. Instead, they were the eyes of skulls that were flashing with scarlet light. Crisp cracking sounds came from inside the stone passageway. They were as dense as raindrops and very rapid. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow looked at the stone passageway outside the hall and saw that the skulls embedded in the walls had all come to life. Every skull was wriggling and crawling out of the walls. Behind the skulls were many thin and short skeletons. Although the skeleton maintained the shape of a human, it was only half the height of a human. With a head the size of a normal person, it looked very out of place. When the skeletons crawled out of the wall, there was only a black hole left in the wall. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow finally understood that the skulls were not embedded in the wall. It was just that their bodies were hidden in the wall and their heads were exposed. They had been in a deep sleep all this time. Now, the white skeletons were all awakened. They gathered in the giant stone passageway and majestically charged towards the main hall. The 200 skeletons gathered together like a grayish-white torrent, flickering with specks of red light. They were full of killing intent and bravery. They quickly rushed into the hall and pounced towards Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow. Even the 4 skulls of the tribulation stage experts in the corners of the hall drilled out of the walls. The bodies of these 4 skulls were all silver-white skeletons. Their bodies surged with dark red bloodlight, and their auras and strength were even more powerful. Crack, crack, crack. With a crisp sound, the 4 silver skeletons also landed in the hall. They stood around Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow, eyeing them covetously and slowly approaching them. 200 smaller skeletons also rushed to the center of the main hall, surrounding Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. The 2 of them were surrounded and were about to be torn to pieces by more than 200 skeletons. At this moment of extreme danger, the 300-meter-tall blood skeleton suddenly opened its mouth and let out an angry and majestic roar. Roar, the dry and hoarse roar was like the roar of a ferocious beast, but it contained a powerful and majestic aura. When the skeletons in the hall heard the blood skeleton's roar, they were so scared that their bodies trembled and they retreated one after another. In particular, the 200 little skeletons retreated from the hall like a tide and all of them slipped into the passageway outside the hall. The remaining 4 tribulation stage skeletons also retreated to the corner of the hall with fear, not daring to act rashly. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow had already raised the swords in their hands to their chests. They were ready to fight back at any time. Seeing this scene, both of them breathed a sigh of relief and slowly put down the swords in their hands. Yarrow, we can't stay here for long. Let's leave quickly. Ji Tianxing pulled Yun Yarrow and turned to walk out of the hall. He had guessed that this place might be the lair of the skeletal demon. Even if he couldn't kill the skeletal demon, he could still vent his anger by destroying its lair. But he didn't expect that this place was not only the lair of the skeletal demon, but also more than 200 skeletons and a mysterious and powerful blood skeleton. At this point, he could only give up his previous plan and leave this place as soon as possible. However, Yun Yarrow stood still and said to him through voice transmission, "Tianxing, wait a minute. I think that blood skeleton is a little strange. Look at its eyes and its aura. It doesn't seem like it wants to kill us." Ji Tianxing turned his head and looked at the blood skeleton's eyes. He stared at the 2 balls of blood flames that were dancing in them. He saw that the 2 balls of blood flames were dancing rhythmically, as if they contained some kind of meaning and were conveying some kind of thought. The blood skeleton's big mouth also opened and closed gently, as if it was talking, but it couldn't make a normal sound. Ji Tianxing observed it for a moment and carefully sensed the changes in its aura. He immediately frowned. Strange. It doesn't seem to be hostile to us. It's trying very hard to communicate with us. It seems like it has something to say to us. Yun Yarrow quickly nodded in agreement. Yes, I felt it too. Just now, when those skeletons wanted to besiege us, it was also it who shouted to retreat and resolved our crisis. Ji Tianxing grew more and more confused. He couldn't understand it. But this shouldn't be. Those skeletons were all afraid of it, so they obviously had to obey its orders. If that's the case, it must be the leader of the skeletons, just like the 10,000 bone demon. Why would it let us go? Yun Yarrow shook her head gently and said through voice transmission, I don't know what's going on either, but my intuition tells me that this blood skeleton is different from the 10,000 bone demon. I'm afraid there's a story behind it. While the 2 of them were discussing through voice transmission, the blood skeleton slowly turned its left hand, and a dark red, blood-colored light appeared in its palm. Originally, its palm was facing down, and its arm was lying flat on the white bone throne. But now, it turned its arm, palm facing up, and slowly reached out towards Ji Tianxing. A ball of blood-red light floated in the middle of its palm, within which was a dark red crystal. Unfortunately, its wrist was bound by bronze chains, so it could only reach out a little bit, and couldn't move anymore. It moved its mouth slightly, as if it was trying to say something to Ji Tianxing. However, it couldn't make any sound, nor could it use its divine will to communicate. Ji Tianxing could only guess its intentions from its expression and movements. Chapter 17:13. The blood-red crystal was as big as Ji Tianxing's fist. The shape of the crystal was irregular. Its surface was uneven and had many sharp edges. When Ji Tianxing held the crystal in his hand, he could feel that the crystal was emitting a scorching heat and contained a terrifying power. He held the blood-red crystal in his hand and examined it for a while, but he couldn't find any clues. Therefore, he raised his head and looked at the blood skull. He asked tentatively, "Are you going to give this crystal to me?" The blood skull lowered its head slightly and looked down at him. The scarlet flames in its eye sockets also became much gentler. It actually nodded slightly in response to Ji Tianxing's question. Ji Tianxing's face immediately lit up. He said to Yun Yarrow, "Yarrow Yarrow, it can actually understand my word." Yun Yarrow also showed a gratified expression. She hurriedly urged, "Then hurry up and ask it about its identity and intentions. Find out what it wants to do." Ji Tianxing looked up at the blood skull and asked, "You're trapped here. You're not in cahoots with the 10,000 bone demon, right?" The blood skull looked down at him motionlessly. The flames in its eye sockets flickered faster. It seemed to be thinking about his question. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow both held their breaths and looked at it quietly, waiting for its answer. However, at this moment, a loud, muffled sound came from the passage outside the hall. It was accompanied by the sound of bones rubbing against each other. The blood skull, Ji Tianxing, and Yun Yarrow were all startled awake. They raised their heads and looked at the passage outside the hall at the same time. Ji Tianxing was no stranger to the sound of bones rubbing against each other. He immediately realized that something was wrong. Not good. The 10,000 bone demon is back. Yun Yarrow also nodded and said with a grave expression, "I can already sense its aura. It's just 15 kilometers away and is rushing over. Let's go." Ji Tianxing immediately put away the blood-red crystal and pulled Yun Yarrow to fly out. Yun Yarrow turned her head to look at the blood skull, only to discover that the blood skull had already raised his right hand and extended 2 fingers towards the northeast corner of the hall. She went blank for a moment before she understood what the blood skull meant. "Tianxing, you can't go back the way you came. You'll be caught by the 10,000 skeletal demon. The blood skull has pointed out a path. We'll escape from there." As she spoke, she pulled Ji Tianxing towards the northeast corner of the hall. In the blink of an eye, the two of them arrived at a dark corner. On the pitch-black wall, there was a huge picture of a ghost god. In the middle of the pattern, there was a mysterious and complex array pattern that was shining with a dark red brilliance. Ji Tianxing stared at the patterns of the array, quickly thinking of ways to open and break it. At this moment, a beam of dark red light shot out of the blood skull's right hand and flew into the pattern of the ghost god. The pattern of the spell formation instantly started to operate, as if it were flowing with dark red blood. Show. 2 breaths later, the pattern of the spell formation opened, revealing a blood-colored vortex the size of a water tank. The vortex was as black as ink, and nothing could be seen inside it. However, both Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow knew that it was a teleportation portal. The two of them hesitated for a moment, but didn't step into the vortex rashly. Instead, they both turned their heads to look at the blood skull. The blood skull nodded slightly at them and waved his right hand, indicating that they shouldn't hesitate and leave immediately. "Forget it. If we stay here any longer, we'll be caught by the 10,000 skeletal demon. Let's trust it this time." Ji Tianxing pondered for a moment before clenching his teeth and making up his mind. He pulled Yun Yarrow into the blood-colored vortex and disappeared with a whoosh. After they disappeared, the blood-colored vortex also rapidly dissipated. The pattern of the spell formation on the wall also became dim and unremarkable. It was as if nothing had happened. A few 100 miles away from the ruins of the 100-Flower Valley, in a dark green mountain range. A beam of red light suddenly appeared in the sky, forming a dark red circle of light. Two figures rushed out of the circle of light and appeared above the mountain range out of thin air. This man and woman were none other than Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. The two of them stood still in the sky and looked back. The dark red circle of light had already dissipated. Phew! We've finally escaped. That blood skull didn't lie to us after all. It gave us a shortcut to escape. The two of them heaved a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. They looked around and discussed the situation. Soon, Ji Tianxing saw their surroundings clearly and identified their location. We're about 250 miles northeast of the 100-Flower Valley. The 10,000 skeletal demon won't be able to sense our aura and location. However, we still have to leave the Mirage mountain range as soon as possible to avoid any accidents. After saying that, he flew high into the sky with Yun Yao and left as fast as lightning. The two of them didn't dare to let down their guard, nor did they dare to stop and rest. After 2 days and 2 nights of continuous flight, they finally flew out of the Mirage mountain range. After leaving the dangerous Mirage mountain range, the couple could finally relax. Ji Tianxing summoned Chen Yu and let it ride on their journey back to the Luotian mountain. The couple sat on Chen Yu's back and took out all kinds of pills and pills. They silently circulated their energy to heal their injuries and regulate their breathing. Half a month later, Chen Yu carried Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao back to the Luotian mountain. When the two of them returned to the Luotian mountain, they still looked exhausted and travel-worn. Chen Yu's injuries hadn't healed, and its magic power and primordial spirit were somewhat empty. It didn't look good. After returning to the Luotian mountain, Ji Tianxing kept it in the Sword World and let it go into seclusion to heal its injuries. When he returned to the Cloud Water Palace, he let the Golden Dragon and the Black Eagle leave the Sword World and return to their respective secret rooms to heal their injuries. However, just as he and Yun Yao were about to enter the secret room to heal their injuries, Grandma Long's voice came from outside the door. Yun Yao, Ji Tianxing. I just got the news that you're back, so I came to see the situation. By the time he finished speaking, Granny Long had already stepped into the room. After Grandma Long entered the room, her gaze fell on Yun Yao. Seeing Yun Yao's travel-worn and slightly disheveled appearance, she immediately revealed a worried expression. Yun Yao, are you okay? Are you injured? What kind of danger did you encounter? Yun Yao hurriedly saluted Granny Long and greeted her. Greetings, Grandma Long, I'm indeed injured, but it's nothing serious. The journey to the 100 Flowers Valley this time was a bit complicated. Please allow me to slowly explain. Grandma Long quickly pulled Yun Yao to sit down and listened to her recount the cause of the incident. Ji Tianxing wasn't in a hurry to go into seclusion to heal his injuries, so he sat down next to Yun Yao. After a full quarter of an hour, Yun Yao finally finished telling the story. The twists and turns of the experience and the dangers made Grandma Long very worried for the two of them. Fortunately, in the end, Yun Yao successfully obtained the Divine Pearl and successfully escaped from the demon's den. Only then did she heave a sigh of relief. I didn't expect that the Phantom Mountain Range and the 100 Flowers Valley were even more dangerous and terrifying than the legend. Chapter 1714. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao's encounter made Granny Long sigh with emotion. She looked at Yun Yao with concern and said earnestly, Yun Yao, before Divine Official Luo left, he repeatedly told you to stay in the Luotian mountain to recuperate. You've already experienced a life and death crisis in the 100 Flower Valley. Now that you've returned safely and obtained the Divine Pearl, you can stay in the Luotian mountain with peace of mind. Don't take any more risks. If something were to happen to you, this old one wouldn't be able to bear the responsibility. Yun Yao understood Granny Long's concerns and nodded. Don't worry, Granny. There's a Divine Pearl in the 100 Flower Valley. I have to go there. Now that I've obtained it, I won't take any more risks. In the following period of time, I will stay in Cloud Water Palace and refine that Divine Pearl in peace. Hearing her say this, Granny Long felt relieved and nodded, that's good. If you have any difficulties, don't hesitate to tell this old woman, and this old woman will help you solve them. Alright, you should go into seclusion to heal and refine the divine pearl as soon as possible. Yoon Yarrow cupped her hands in salute and said goodbye. Then, she turned around and entered the secret chamber. Only Granny Long and Ji Tianxing were left in the room. Granny Long's expression turned grave. She looked at Ji Tianxing with burning eyes and asked, "Tianxing, you said you encountered a 10,000 skeletal demon in the 100-Flower Valley? And a devil's den. Why don't you tell me in detail what's going on?" Granny Long, like most martial artists, only knew that the Phantom Mountain Range was very dangerous and a forbidden area. And the 100-Flower Valley was one of the most dangerous forbidden areas in the Phantom Mountain Range. The dangers she understood were nothing more than powerful and savage demon beasts and some treacherous terrains and environments. No one knew that the 100 Flowers Valley was hiding an evil 10,000 skeletal demon, and there was even an ancient demonic lair. This was absolutely shocking news to Granny Long. She had to know the truth and report it to the Luoshui martial god as soon as possible. After all, the Phantom Mountain Range was in the territory of the Black Frost Empire and the Luoshui Divine Kingdom. Ji Tianxing also understood this point, so he explained to Granny Long, "Granny Long, this is a long story, so I'll keep it short. The origin of the 100 Flowers Valley was mainly due to the longevity divine pearl, which could release powerful life divine power to nurture flowers, trees, and many other living beings. It was precisely because of this that hundreds of flowers bloomed in the valley, and all of them underwent strange changes. The best of the flowers and trees could even evolve into powerful demons that ruled over the entire 100-Flower Valley. Many adventurers of various races, as well as many ferocious beasts, had rashly entered 100-Flower Valley, only to be killed by the flower demons and the deadly poison. Over the past 1,000 years, the Flower Valley had accumulated tens of thousands of corpses, forming the 10,000 skeletal demon. The demonic qi in the Flower Valley was too heavy, causing the flowers to mutate and become extremely poisonous. This made the 100 Flowers Valley even more dangerous, and those who entered would most likely die. As for why there's a demon's den and an imprisoned blood skeleton in the depths of the 100 Flowers Valley, that's unknown. Granny Long nodded slightly and said with a grave expression, "Yes, your analysis is very reasonable, but the only suspicious point is the underground demon's den and the blood skeleton. I know that in the northernmost part of the Divine Kingdom, there's a forbidden death zone called the North Underworld Mountain. That's the territory of the ghost race, and almost no one has set foot there for 10,000 years, so no one knows what's going on there. The 10,000 skeletal demon and the blood skeleton you mentioned should be the ghost race. The Divine Master has always hated the ghost race very much, and once he discovered them sneaking into the Divine Kingdom, he would kill them without mercy. It's just that I didn't expect that there would be a ghost race powerhouse hidden in the 100 Flowers Valley, and a demon's den. It's been 1,000 years, and no one has noticed this." Ji Tianxing nodded and said in a low voice, "Granny Long, Yoon Yarrow and I were able to escape because of the blood skeleton. The blood skeleton was imprisoned in the demon's den, chained to a white bone throne by bronze chains. It could understand my words, and it didn't have any ill intentions towards us. It even helped us escape. I think this matter is very strange, and the blood skeleton's identity is very suspicious. It's worth investigating further. If we can figure out the blood skeleton's true identity, we might be able to understand why there's a demon's den hidden in the depths of the 100 Flowers Valley." Granny Long nodded in agreement and asked, "Tianxing, think carefully. Did the blood skeleton have any obvious characteristics? Or did it leave behind any clues?" Ji Tianxing hurriedly took out the blood-red crystal from his spatial ring and handed it to Granny Long. "Before we escaped from the demon's den, the blood skeleton gave me this crystal as if it wanted to tell me something. Unfortunately, it couldn't speak or communicate with us through divine will, so we couldn't guess its intentions. Also, I carefully examined this crystal. Other than the terrifying blood energy and demonic power it contains, there's nothing special about it." Granny Long reached out and took the blood-red crystal. She held it in her palm and carefully examined it. This crystal doesn't seem to have anything special about it, and it's hard to find any clues. However, since the blood skeleton gave it to you, it must have its own reasons for doing so. Perhaps it's because our strength and knowledge are too shallow that we can't see through its secrets." As she spoke, Granny Long solemnly put away the crystal and said, "Tianxing, you don't have to worry about this matter. I'll send this crystal to the Divine Kingdom and present it to the Divine Master. I'll also report the matter of the 100 Flowers Valley to the Divine Master. I believe that with the Divine Master's wisdom and methods, he'll definitely be able to give us an answer." Ji Tianxing nodded and said with a gratified expression, "I was thinking the same thing. Thank you for your trouble, Granny Long. All right, I'll take a trip to the Divine Kingdom. You should also go into seclusion to heal your injuries." Granny Long waved her hand and turned to leave the room. After Granny Long left, Ji Tianxing pondered for a moment before entering the secret chamber. 5 days passed in the blink of an eye. Ji Tianxing had been in seclusion in the secret chamber for 5 whole days, and his injuries and magic power had both recovered. After he finished his cultivation, he walked out of the secret chamber. Yun Yarrow was still in seclusion, busy refining the longevity god bead. She had yet to show herself. Ji Tianxing estimated that she would be in seclusion for at least 3 to 5 months. Granny Long was also not on Luotian Mountain. It was obvious that she had gone to the Divine Kingdom and had yet to return. Ji Tianxing waited in Cloudwater Palace for an entire day, but there was still no news from Granny Long. He simply returned to the secret chamber and continued to cultivate. He had already reached the 9th level of the primordial spirit realm, and after the battle in the 100 Flowers Valley, he had consolidated his martial path and had a more solid foundation. He continued to comprehend the 4th level of Sword Soul's path and continued to cultivate in seclusion to increase his strength. He wanted to reach the peak of the 9th level of the primordial spirit realm as soon as possible so that he could prepare to break through to the tribulation realm. His various encounters and experiences had made him realize a problem. A primordial spirit realm cultivator was not considered a powerhouse on the Shunwu continent. Chapter 17:15. For an entire month, Ji Tianxing had been cultivating in seclusion. There were sufficient cultivation resources prepared in the chamber. The heaven and earth spiritual energies were extremely rich, allowing him to cultivate with half the effort. After a month of arduous cultivation, his insights into the 4th level of the Sword Soul Tao became deeper and more thorough. Even though his strength realm did not increase and was still at the 9th firmament essence soul realm, he was still a distance away from the perfected realm. However, he gradually comprehended sword intent, a sword intent that was unique to him. His essence soul golden sword had also undergone a subtle change. The resplendent golden sword's surface was surrounded by a faint white light. Back when he was still in the Tianxian continent, Burial of Heaven had told him that to become a sword legend like Kenshin, it was not enough to be strong and have exquisite sword techniques. He had to comprehend a sword intent that belonged to him and fuse his will with his sword Tao. Only then could he reach the realm where his sword moved according to his heart and his words became law. For a sword legend like Kenshin, every slash of his sword was the will of heaven. It was like the laws of heaven and earth, making all people submit to him. Even gods could not resist him. Ji Tianxing still had a long way to go to reach that level. However, he had already taken the first step by comprehending sword intent. Ji Tianxing was filled with anticipation. He looked forward to condensing sword intent and fusing it perfectly into his sword Tao. When that happened, his combat strength would definitely increase exponentially, allowing him to crush any opponent at the same realm. After ending his seclusion, Ji Tianxing left the chamber. He headed to Yun Yarrow's chamber to check on Yun Yarrow's cultivation situation. However, the chamber was empty. Yun Yarrow was not in the chamber. He hurriedly found Black Eagle and asked about Yun Yarrow's whereabouts. Only then did Black Eagle tell him that Yun Yarrow had already exited seclusion 2 days ago. Early this morning, a guard came to inform Yun Yarrow to head to the assembly hall. Granny Long had important matters to discuss. Upon learning of this news, Ji Tianxing hurriedly left Cloudwater Palace and rushed to the assembly hall. The great meeting hall was located in the center of the Luotian Mountain. It was a majestic palace with a radius of 300 meters. There was a huge square outside the palace, and there were many guards guarding it. Usually, when the Luotian Mountain held important festivals, sacrifices, and ceremonies, it would be held in the plaza outside the main hall. Ji Tianxing passed through a group of palaces, crossed the vast square in front of the palace, and arrived at the conference hall. As soon as he entered the grand hall, he heard the voices of Granny Long and a few divine envoys. They were discussing something important. The dazzling hall was brightly lit, and not a speck of dust could be seen anywhere. 6 thick and sturdy golden pillars with dragon carvings supported the dome of the main hall. The dome was inlaid with tens of thousands of gems, forming a vast star map that emitted a dazzling light. In the north of the hall, there was a 30-jong tall, lifelike statue of the Luoshui martial god carved on the wall. Below the statue was a high platform, and in the middle of the platform was a luxurious throne. Granny Dragon, who had a head full of Dharma protectors, was sitting upright on the throne. She had a dignified look on her face as she pondered something. In the hall, there were 8 experts standing on both sides of the hall. 7 of them were white-haired elders or middle-aged men and women with dignified bearings. The 7 of them had the strength of a tribulation transcendence realm expert, and they were famous experts. They were the 7 divine envoys of the Luotian mountain. There was also a beautiful young woman dressed in a moon-white dress. She was none other than Yun Yao. When Ji Tianxing entered the hall, everyone immediately stopped their discussion and turned to look at him. Granny Long also looked up at him and said in a low voice, "Ji Tianxing, you're already out of seclusion? You came at the right time. I was just discussing that matter with everyone." Ji Tianxing walked to the middle of the hall and stood still. He bowed to Granny Long and the 7 divine envoys and greeted everyone. Then, his gaze landed on Yun Yao as he sized her up. Yun Yao had clearly refined the longevity divine pearl. Her complexion was excellent, and her aura was very stable and powerful. Moreover, her strength had increased by leaps and bounds. She had reached the peak of the 9th level of the Essence Soul realm. Ji Tianxing could also clearly sense that her body was filled with boundless life divine power. She was like a moving divine object and treasure. He secretly sent a voice transmission to ask about Yun Yao's situation. After exchanging a few words, he talked to Granny Long about serious matters. "Granny Long, since you gathered everyone here today, is it because of the matter in the 100 Flowers Valley?" Granny Long nodded slightly and said, "That's right. I have personally sent the crystal you gave me to the Divine Nation and presented it to the Divine Master. The Divine Master spent a day and a night to determine the true identity of the blood skull through the blood-colored crystal. The crystal is in the Divine Master's hands. I returned to the Luotian mountain 3 days ago and gathered everyone here to discuss this matter." Upon hearing this, Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and asked expectantly, "Granny Long, the Divine Master already knows the true identity of the blood skull?" "Of course." Granny Long nodded and said, "The Divine Master is erudite and knowledgeable. There is nothing in this world that she doesn't know." Ji Tianxing quickly asked, "Who is the blood skull?" Granny Long looked at him solemnly and said in a low voice, "As for its identity, we have to start from 1,000 years ago. Back then, the Divine Master had a group of iron blood guards called the Blood Rose. There were only 100 people in that group. They were all elite experts, and all of them were women. They were extremely loyal to the Divine Master and had always protected the Divine Nation. They carried out all kinds of secret missions for the Divine Master and cleared all obstacles." Granny Long said slowly, her voice low and solemn. Ji Tianxing vaguely guessed something, but he listened silently and did not interrupt. Granny Long sighed and continued, "The captain of the Blood Rose was called Yu Wei. She was the Divine Master's most trusted and most valued right-hand woman. Back then, Yu Wei's strength had reached the peak of the 9th level of the Tribulation Passing realm. She was only 1 step away from becoming a martial sage. Her husband was the Divine Emperor of the Heaven's Wall Kingdom, the bravest and most battle-hardened Emperor Tian Wu. Emperor Tian Wu was an orphan and grew up in the Luotian mountain. He grew up from a servant to a divine disciple and finally became a great emperor. He was extremely loyal to the Divine Master. After establishing the Heaven's Wall Kingdom, he guarded the northern border of the Divine Nation and swore to fight the Ghost Clan in the North Underworld Mountain. Yu Wei was also loyal. In order to serve the Divine Master, she was willing to give up the position of the Divine Empress of the Heaven's Wall Kingdom and become the captain of the Blood Rose. However, in the Great War 1,000 years ago, Emperor Tianwu led his army into the North Underworld Mountain. He was besieged by 3 great demon saints and died. Yu Wei was heartbroken when she heard the news. In grief and anger, she led dozens of guards to the North Underworld Mountain to kill the Ghost Clan and avenge Emperor Tianwu. Unfortunately, the North Underworld Mountain was too dangerous. The Ghost Clan was too strong and dozens of guards died in the battle. Chapter 1716. Granny Long's story made everyone's hearts heavy. The hall was silent, and it was suffused with an atmosphere of grief, indignation, and pain. That incident 1,000 years ago was the shame of the Luoshui kingdom and no one knew about it. Ji Tianxing was confused. Even the Tianwu emperor had died in the North Underworld Mountain. How could Yu Wei, who was not even a martial sage, dare to attack the North Underworld Mountain? But he thought about it and remembered that the Tianwu emperor was Yu Wei's husband. It was understandable that Yu Wei could not bear the pain of losing her husband and rushed to the North Underworld Mountain in anger. If one day he fought with the ancestor Fiend Celestial and died under the ancestor Fiend Celestial's blade, Yu Wei would definitely die. Yun Yarrow would also go crazy and fight with the ancestor Fiend Celestial. Therefore, he did not interrupt Granny Long and did not ask any questions. Granny Long paused for a moment and her tone became heavier. She continued, after Yu Wei escaped to the kingdom, she knelt outside the Luoshui palace and repented for 7 days and 7 nights. It was her rashness that killed dozens of elite guards. Although the Divine Master was merciful and did not punish her, she still decided to resign from the position of captain and leave the kingdom. She was injured by the Ghost Clan's secret technique and her strength was decreasing day by day. Her life force was weakening rapidly and she did not have long to live. Everyone thought that she would return to the Tianwu Empire and find a way to treat her injuries. But after the Tianwu Emperor died, the Tianwu Empire was in chaos. In just half a year, the Tianwu Emperor's nephew, Luo Zi, gained the support of the officials and ascended the throne. He controlled the entire empire. The Tianwu Emperor's relics were burned and Yu Wei was no longer the divine empress of the empire. She was chased out of the imperial city. In the end, she took the few relics of the Tianwu Emperor and left the Tianwu Empire quietly. Many years later, she entered the Black Frost Empire and lived in seclusion in a forbidden area, waiting for death to come. When she was alive, she worked for the kingdom and served the Divine Master sincerely. She was unable to sleep with her husband and did not have any children. After she died, the Tianwu Emperor turned into ashes and the husband and wife could not sleep together. This happened 1,000 years ago and very few people know about it. It's so sad. Sigh. After Granny Long finished telling the story, she sighed with a heavy heart. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow finally understood the Bloodskull's identity and origin. They couldn't help but exchange a complicated look. The hall was silent. Everyone was silent. After a long while, Ji Tianxing said, "So that's how it is. Who would have thought that the blood skeleton was actually the captain of the Divine Master's guards, Yu Wei?" Back then, she had been severely injured by the Ghost Clan's experts and had been subjected to the Ghost Clan's secret technique. Her body now contained a shocking amount of demonic qi. When she left the Tianwu Empire, she knew that her days were numbered. Therefore, she took her husband's belongings and left. She wanted to find a forbidden area where no one would step foot and wait for death to come. Even if she couldn't be buried with Emperor Tianwu, she wanted to be buried with Emperor Tianwu's relics and sleep forever. The 100 Flowers Valley in the depths of the Phantom Mountain Range was nourished by the longevity divine pearl. Hundreds of flowers bloomed. It was definitely a beautiful scene. Therefore, when she stepped into the 100 Flowers Valley, she chose to be buried in the 100 Flowers Valley. At this point, Ji Tianxing frowned and thought for a while. He analyzed, if I'm not wrong, the demonic cave we found at the bottom of the 100 Flowers Valley was actually Yu Wei's tomb. The giant stone passageway and the hall were all built according to the layout of a tomb. It was just that they hadn't been completed yet. Yu Wei wanted to be buried at the bottom of the 100 Flowers Valley. However, before she could complete the tomb, something happened and took her life in advance. She also didn't expect that after her death, the shocking amount of demonic qi and the tens of thousands of corpses would fuse and form 10,000 bone demons. The 10,000 bone demons took over her tomb and turned it into a demonic cave. Furthermore, the 10,000 skeletal demon had even built an altar and used an evil secret technique to turn her skeleton into a skeletal demon. Because of that, her corpses became blood skeletons and were imprisoned on the White Bone Throne. She hated the Ghost Clan very much when she was alive. Even after she died and was turned into a blood skeleton, she still refused to submit. Ji Tianxing's analysis made Granny Long and the other divine envoys nod their heads in agreement. Your analysis is right. I think so too. Ji Tianxing's speculation coincides with my thought. 1,000 years ago, I was still a child. I didn't expect such a sad thing to happen in my divine kingdom. The Ghost Clan of the North Underworld Mountain is the enemy of our Luo Shui divine kingdom. Granny Long also nodded slightly and said to Ji Tianxing, Tianxing, your analysis is basically correct. The Divine Master also has the same thoughts. Back then, the Divine Master was busy with another important matter and didn't have time to care about Yu Wei. When the Divine Master finished dealing with the important matter, it was already decades later and Yu Wei had passed away many years ago. The Divine Master has always felt regretful about this matter. He even felt guilty towards Yu Wei and Emperor Tianwu. Therefore, the Divine Master kept the blood crystal with him as a memento. The Divine Master also ordered the Luo Shui Mountain to do their best to retrieve Yu Wei's corpse. No matter what, we can't let Yu Wei's corpse be controlled by the Ghost Clan. This is an insult to Yu Wei. The warriors and ancestors who sacrificed themselves for our divine kingdom can't be humiliated like this. The 7 divine envoys nodded in agreement and cursed the Ghost Clan angrily. Ji Tianxing thought for a moment and said seriously, Granny Long, the safest way is for you to lead everyone to the 100-Flower Valley. We have to destroy the 10,000 skeleton demon and destroy the entire 100-Flower Valley to rescue Yu Wei's corpse. I have a way to purify Yu Wei's corpse and let her rest in peace. She can be properly buried in the Luo Shui Mountain. Granny Long's eyes were filled with shock. She nodded and said, Can you really purify the Ghost Clan's Ghost Clan? If that's the case, that's great. I was just thinking about saving Yu Wei's corpse and burying her on the Luo Shui Mountain. This way, I can give her some comfort. It's just that I haven't found a way to purify the Ghost Clan's Ghost Clan. Ji Tianxing nodded again. He cupped his hands and said, Granny Long, don't worry about the matter of purifying the Ghost Clan's Ghost Clan. Just leave it to me. There's no time to lose. Let's leave as soon as possible. It's been more than a month since the incident. I'm afraid that if we're late, something else will happen. Granny Long thought for a moment and ordered, All right, let's leave now. Divine Envoy Du, Divine Envoy Liu, Ji Tianxing, Yun Yarrow, the 4 of you will follow me to the 100-Flower Valley. The other 5 Divine Envoys, please stay on the Luo Shui Mountain and take charge of the situation. The Divine Envoys bowed and expressed their obedience. Not long after, Granny Long left the Luo Shui Mountain with the 2 Divine Envoys, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. Chapter 17:17. It took Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow half a month to reach the 100-Flower Valley. Granny Long's flying boat was extremely fast, several times faster than them. 3 days later, the flying boat entered the Phantom Mountain Range. Under Ji Tianxing's guidance, the flying boat went straight to the 100-Flower Valley. Along the way, many primordial soul realm monsters were alarmed and attacked the flying boat. However, the speed of those demonic beasts was too slow. Before they even rushed to the vicinity of the flying boat, they were shaken off far away. A few hours later, the flying boat arrived at the area where the 100-Flower Valley was located. They were still a few hundred miles away, but when they looked down at the ground in front of them, they saw ruins of a few hundred miles. The 100-Flower Valley, which used to be filled with clouds and flowers, had now become a dark brown wasteland. There was not a trace of green to be seen. The flying boat arrived above the ruins and disappeared in a flash. Swoosh! Granny Long, the 2 divine envoys, Ji Tianxing, Yun Yarrow, and the others immediately appeared in the sky. Everyone, spread out and stay alert. Granny Long waved her hand, indicating for everyone to disperse. The 2 divine envoys quickly drew their swords and looked around with keen eyes. Ji Tianxing stared at the ruins on the ground. After observing for a while, his face suddenly changed and he frowned. No need. The demon's den has been destroyed. The blood skull is probably gone too. Everyone was shocked and looked down at the ground. There was a deep pit on the ground that was 100 miles wide. It was like an abyss. The pit was roughly 50 miles deep, and the bottom of the pit was dim. Moreover, the soil in the pit was as black as charcoal, and there were pieces of gravel scattered among the piles of soil and ruins. The terrain around the edge of the pit was also spread out like a bowl. Granny Long and the two divine envoys had rich combat experience, so they knew at a glance that it was caused by an explosion in the depths of the pit. The shockwave that could destroy the heavens and extinguish the earth spread out in all directions, creating a huge crater with a radius of 100 miles. Now, the deep pit was as black as charcoal and filled with rich demonic qi. Granny Long looked at the crater, then turned to Ji Tianxing. With a serious expression, she asked, "Tianxing, is this where the demon's den is?" "That's right." Ji Tianxing nodded and said with a complicated tone, 50 miles deep underground, the area with a radius of tens of miles has been destroyed by the Great War. The stone passageways and halls have all been destroyed and turned into ruins. Divine Emissary Du frowned and thought for a moment, and then asked doubtfully, "From the traces of this big pit, the incident has already happened a month ago. A great battle had taken place in this deep pit. It was the battle between two Tribulation Transcendence Realm experts that caused such a terrifying destructive power. Could it be caused by the battle between the 10,000 Bone Demon and the Blood Skull?" Yun Yarrow nodded slightly and said, "At present, it seems very likely, but we still have to go down and investigate to see if we can find any clues." After saying that, she and Ji Tianxing flew to the deep pit and landed at the bottom of it. Granny Long and the two divine emissaries quickly followed and went to the deep pit to check the surrounding ruins. In the dark pit, there were huge pits and gullies everywhere, and countless scorched earth and gravel were scattered everywhere. The scene of devastation before their eyes showed everyone just how frightening the might of that battle was. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow's eyes were sharp, so they quickly found many broken bones in the scorched earth and ruins. After verification, they found that these bones were the bones of primordial spirit realm martial artists. Some of them belonged to human martial artists, some belonged to demon beasts, and some belonged to foreign martial artists. However, even after searching the entire crater for an hour, they still couldn't find anything that had anything to do with the blood skull. They couldn't even find a blood-red bone fragment. After an hour, they had no choice but to give up and fly out of the deep pit one after another. Everyone returned to the top of the deep pit and gathered together to discuss the matter. Granny Long said with a solemn expression, "From the current situation, we're too late. As early as a month ago, a great battle took place here and destroyed the entire Devil's Den. Tens of thousands of corpses were destroyed in the battle and turned into bone fragments. Only the 10,000 Bone Demon and the Blood Skull didn't leave any fragments or clues. They probably left this place." Divine Emissary Willow frowned and said worriedly, "Granny Long, what should we do next? The Divine Master has given us an order that we must find Yu Wei's remains to complete the task. But this place has been destroyed, and Yu Wei's remains are missing. Where are we going to find them?" Ji Tianxing, Yun Yarrow, and Divine Emissary Du all had the same concern, so they looked at Granny Long. Granny Long thought for a while and then said in a deep voice, "The Ghost Clan wanted to refine Yu Wei's remains into a bone demon and turn her into a blood skull to be controlled by the Ghost Clan. If that's the case, it means that the Ghost Clan has some kind of conspiracy and purpose, so they won't easily destroy Yu Wei's remains. Let's assume that the 10,000 Bone Demon and the Blood Skull have both left this place. Then, they must have left traces and alarmed other experts when they left the Phantom Mountain Range and moved around the continent. I plan to send a message to the Black Frost Empire and ask them to cooperate with the Luotian Mountain to investigate the Blood Skull's whereabouts." Everyone's eyes lit up and they nodded in agreement. Divine Emissary Du said with a gratified look, "That's a good idea. The Phantom Mountain Range is in the territory of the Black Frost Empire. Now that such a thing has happened in the mountain range, the Black Frost Empire will certainly help us. As long as the Black Frost Empire sends elite experts to investigate the Phantom Mountain Range, they will definitely find some clues." Divine Emissary Willow also agreed. Granny Long then took out a communication jade slip and sent a message to the Black Frost Empire. Ji Tianxing thought for a while and added, "The Black Frost Empire will be responsible for the investigation of the Blood Skull for the time being. They have more people and more power, so it will be easier for them to find clues. But now, we must destroy this place and remove the demonic qi in the earth. Otherwise, the remaining demonic qi and the bone fragments on the ground will likely give birth to another bone demon." "That's true." Granny Long nodded and said with some difficulty, "However, in order to completely remove the demonic qi here, I need everyone to cooperate and set up a few large arrays. It will take at least half a month, and we may not be able to completely remove it." Before she could finish, Ji Tianxing waved his hand and said, "No need to go through so much trouble. Just leave it to me." After saying that, he raised his palms with a solemn expression and tried his best to activate the power of the heaven-mending orb, shooting out a sacred white light that filled the sky. Swoosh! 2 beams of divine white light fell from the sky and covered the deep pit. Chapter 17:18. In just an hour, Ji Tianxing had used the power of the heaven-mending orb to purify the entire crater. Not a single trace of demonic energy could be found in the crater that was hundreds of miles wide. Even the skeletons scattered in the ruins were purified by the white light, and their demonic energy and death aura were also purified. However, this was only the beginning and not the end. Apart from the crater, the ruins that were once the 100-Flower Valley was also filled with dense demonic energy. Ji Tianxing patiently used the secret technique and used the power of the heaven-mending orb to gradually purify the demonic energy in the ruins. This process took him an entire 6 hours. His mission was complete. Not a single trace of demonic energy could be found in the ruins that were hundreds of miles wide. Of course, in order to complete this mission, he had used up a lot of energy and his mind was also exhausted. He slowly stopped and said to Granny Long, "The demonic energy here has been completely purified. There will be no more trouble in the future." Granny Long showed a gratified expression and nodded, "That's good." Yun Yarrow stared at the ruins for a long time. After a moment of consideration, she shook her head and said, "I'm afraid this is not enough. The surroundings are all mountains and forests. Only this area is full of ruins. It will take at least 100 years for this area to grow into a forest. It just so happens that after my seclusion this time, I grasped the power of the God Orb and obtained a new ability. Let me restore it." As she spoke, she formed a hand seal with both hands and formed a mysterious trajectory. She was using some kind of secret technique. Suddenly, 2 dark green lights gushed out from her palms and fell from the sky onto the ruins. The dense dark green divine light immediately turned into specks of light and drilled into the grayish-brown earth. Then, a shocking scene appeared. Dense green sprouts emerged from the barren and withered earth and quickly grew like bamboo shoots after a rain. The healthy green sprouts rose from the ground at a speed visible to the naked eye and turned into small trees. Many sprouts quickly grew and turned into flowers and plants, blooming with beautiful purple and red flowers. In just a short 15 minutes, the wasteland that was dozens of miles wide was covered by grass, trees, and flowers. Yun Yarrow continued to channel the dark green divine light, causing the grass and trees to quickly expand in all directions. The dense flowers and trees also grew crazily from 2 to 3 meters tall to more than 10 meters, and then to dozens of meters tall. Ji Tianxing, Granny Long, and the 2 gods' envoys witnessed this scene with their own eyes and were full of shock and astonishment. No one expected Yun Yarrow to have mastered such a miraculous secret technique and divine power. The dark green divine light that she shot out created millions of flowers and trees at a heaven-defying speed. This was not just creating things, she could even control the growth of thousands of flowers and trees and plants. Such a miraculous method was not much different from that of the gods in the ancient legends. Unknowingly, 4 hours had passed. The dense forest spread, the ruins, and trees of trees and trees of earth. Towering trees stood in the middle of the forest. Each of them was at least 100 meters tall and had luxuriant foliage. As far as the eye could see, the newly sprouted 500 miles of forest was no different from the surrounding forest. Those who did not know would never think that this was the former 100-Flower Valley. 4 hours later, Yoon Yarrow stopped. She did not feel tired or slack after casting for 4 hours. Her expression was as calm as usual. Granny Long looked at her with shining eyes and a gratified expression appeared on her face. She nodded and said, "That's great. Yoon Yarrow, you have mastered such a powerful divine power. Not only can you accelerate the growth of thousands of trees, but you can also control flowers and trees. This is definitely a miraculous ability." A gratified smile appeared on Ji Tianxing's face as he added, "The effect and power of the longevity divine pearl far exceeded our imagination. Yarrow can not only accelerate the growth of flowers and trees, she also has incredible vitality. She can heal the wounded and heal the dying." Yoon Yarrow nodded and said, "Tianxing is right. The divine pearl I obtained in the 100-Flower Valley is called the longevity divine pearl. The longevity divine power contained in the divine pearl is effective for all living things." Granny Long nodded and said with a smile, "That's great. Yoon Yarrow, you have such an amazing harvest. All the dangers you went through before were worth it. The 100-Flower Valley no longer exists, and we have lost track of the Blood Skull. It's time for us to leave." Then, Granny Long took out the airship and led everyone to board it. They flew toward the outskirts of the Mirage Mountains. About 4 hours later, the airship was flying above the vast mountains. The sky ahead was covered with large gray clouds, and the light was very dim. Such a scene was very common in the Mirage Mountains. Many areas were shrouded in dense fog and clouds, looking gloomy, oppressive, and frightening. Granny Long did not care too much. She drove the airship into the clouds and was about to pass through this area. However, not long after the airship entered the clouds, an overwhelming amount of black light gushed out from all directions and drowned the airship. Every black light was a ghost bat that was completely black and exuded the cold air of death. They were as big as a water tank, with sharp fangs and scarlet eyes. They looked extremely hideous. Granny Long had just seen those ghost bats. Before she could react, thousands of ghost bats crashed into the airship and self-destructed. Boom! 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 The deafening sound exploded in the sky and shook the area hundreds of miles away. Thousands of ghost bats self-destructed and turned into dust on the spot, releasing endless black light that drowned the airship like fire. How could the dark silver airship withstand such a strong and sudden attack? With a series of cracking sounds, cracks appeared on the flying boat, and countless pieces of debris flew out of it. In the sea of fire, the flying boat quickly disintegrated, becoming fragmented and scattered in all directions. Granny Long, Ji Tianxing, Yoon Yarrow, and the 2 gods' messengers were thrown out of the debris and flew in all directions. Ji Tianxing and Yoon Yarrow were fine. They knew the dangers of the Mirage Mountains and had been vigilant. When the airship was attacked, the 2 of them used their secret techniques to protect themselves. Even though they were thrown out, they only suffered minor injuries. Moreover, the 2 of them quickly gathered together after flying for 40 miles. The 2 gods' messengers were in a worse state. When the airship was attacked, the 2 of them were meditating in the room. The airship suddenly collapsed, and the 2 of them were caught off guard. They were immediately hit by their own power and were severely injured. Chapter 17:19. Boom! Boom! The 2 messengers crashed into the forest almost at the same time, creating a loud, dull sound. The 1,000-feet-tall mountain shook violently, and a huge crack appeared, extending from the peak to the foot of the mountain. Dust and wood chips were blown up into the sky by the airwaves. The 2 messengers looked miserable. They were covered in mud and blood, and their breathing was chaotic as they fell into the deep pit. After a while, they climbed out of the pit and flew up into the sky shakily. However, just as they flew into the sky, before they could see their surroundings, they were drowned by the overwhelming black light. At least 5,000 ghost bats pounced on the 2 of them in a frenzy, besieging them. Although the individual ghost bats were not strong, only around the 1st or 2nd level of the primordial soul realm. However, when thousands of ghost bats gathered together, their destructive power was strong enough to destroy heaven and earth. Even a tribulation realm powerhouse could not withstand it. All the ghost bats seemed to have gone crazy, and they attacked without fear of death. They released the cold air of death and attacked the 2 messengers. Swoosh! 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 Tens of thousands of cold air of death were like sharp black blades, crazily attacking. The ghost bats rushed to the two messengers and attacked them with their sharp claws and fangs. Bang! 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 Dull, loud sounds kept exploding, echoing in the sky. The two messengers were beaten to a pulp, and their magical power shields kept cracking. Soon, more wounds appeared on their bodies. They were already heavily injured, and now they were surrounded by 5,000 ghost bats. They were in a very dangerous situation. Even when they calmed down, they attacked in an orderly manner, using their secret techniques to kill countless ghost bats. However, a shocking and frightening scene appeared. The ghost bats that had been blasted into pieces turned into pieces of black light and quickly gathered together to form more ghost bats. These ghost bats were immortal, and they could not be killed completely. The newly born ghost bats were even more ferocious, and they attacked recklessly. The two messengers were terrified, and their hearts were filled with helplessness and anger. They fought back with all their might, using all kinds of powerful secret techniques to kill the ghost bats and block their attacks. However, they could not break through the ghost bats' encirclement, and they were trapped in the sea of black light, unable to escape. The two divine envoys were in the northwest, besieged by thousands of ghost bats, unable to escape. At the same time, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow were being attacked by thousands of ghost bats in the southeast. The two of them were more than 100 miles away from the two god envoys. More than 6,000 ghost bats formed an ocean of black light that covered the sky and the earth, drowning the two of them. The two of them were in the boundless darkness, constantly being attacked by the ghost bats. They were in an extremely dangerous situation. Yun Yarrow's body lit up with green light, forming an oval-shaped shield to protect herself. She cast a spell with her left hand and held her sword with her right hand. She kept slashing out dazzling sword lights to block the ghost bats that were attacking her from all directions. Even though her swordsmanship was exquisite and her defense was very tight. However, there were simply too many ghost bats surrounding her. Her magic power shield kept shattering and reforming. Very quickly, she was injured. Hideous wounds were left all over her body. Dark red blood gushed out and dyed her white dress red. Fortunately, she had mastered the power of immortality. After being injured, she only needed to think to use the power of immortality to quickly heal her injuries. Therefore, she was constantly in a state of being injured and recovering quickly. Her life was not in danger, but she could not break through the ghost bat's encirclement and escape. In the sky 10 miles away from her, Ji Tianxing was also fighting fiercely. He was also in the ocean of black light, surrounded by thousands of ghost bats. He was in a perilous situation. Even though he used his magic power to protect himself and the golden rock's wings. However, there were too many ghost bats and they were as fast as lightning. It was impossible for him to defend himself. The slightest mistake would allow the ghost bats to take advantage of it and injure him. There were many new wounds on his body, and they were still increasing. Blood gushed out from the wounds and dyed his robe red. He fought back recklessly, using powerful swordsmanship to kill many ghost bats. However, the ghost bats kept reviving and attacking even more ferociously. They trapped him in the ocean of black light, unable to escape. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing was furious and anxious. He activated the power of the heaven-mending orb and struck out with his palm, filling the sky with white light. Bang! A palm formed by white light slammed into the ocean of black light, killing more than 200 ghost bats instantly. Those ghost bats were smashed into pieces, turning into pieces of black light, trying to reform their forms. However, the holy white light immediately purified the black light, turning it into nothingness. The 300 ghost bats were completely dead and could no longer reform. Ji Tianxing was encouraged. He continued to strike out white light and killed more ghost bats. However, at this moment, the thousands of ghost bats suddenly stopped attacking. The ocean of black light stopped for a moment, then it spun faster and formed a huge black light vortex. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The black light vortex spun rapidly in the sky and exploded with powerful spatial power, tearing the sky apart. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow had just realized that something was wrong when they were enveloped by the black light vortex and disappeared from the sky. In the next moment, The black light vortex enveloped them and teleported them 100,000 miles away. Granny Long was above a pile of flying shipwreckage, surrounded by more than 8,000 ghost bats. She was a martial saint expert, an existence that had transcended the mortal world. Ordinary people could not threaten her at all. When the flying ship was destroyed and she was thrown out, she was not injured at all. Even if she was surrounded by 8,000 ghost bats, she could still deal with them calmly. The attacks of those ghost bats could not hurt her at all. However, there were too many ghost bats. She was trapped in the ocean of black light and could not break free for the time being. Even if she used secret techniques to kill batches of ghost bats, they would never die. However, those ghost bats were indestructible. They kept gathering and being reborn. It was impossible to kill them all. Granny Long was very anxious. She was worried about Yun Yarrow and Ji Tianxing's safety. She only wanted to break free and save them as soon as possible. However, those ghost bats kept pestering her, forming a huge cage of black light and sealing her inside. The ghost bats raised by the ghost race. I didn't expect the ghost race of the North Underworld Mountain to be so arrogant. They dare to use ghost bats to attack the people of the Luotian Mountain. After dozens of breaths, Granny Long figured out the characteristics of the ghost bats and immediately thought of a way to deal with them. She formed hand seals with both hands and chanted a mysterious incantation. She used a secret technique. Suddenly, the black clouds in the sky rolled and condensed into dozens of lightning pillars as thick as water tanks. Kaboom! As Granny Long waved her hands, more than 30 lightning pillars fell from the sky and blasted into the ocean of black light. Thousands of ghost bats were hit by the lightning pillars and shattered into pieces by the purple lightning arcs, scattering in the sky. Chapter 1720. Pieces of black light scattered in the sky, fluttering and slowly gathering together. The sacred and violent power of lightning had an obvious restraining effect on the ghost bats. Although the lightning could not directly kill the ghost bats, it could severely injure them, preventing them from recovering their strength quickly and making it difficult for them to gather again. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Granny Long's figure flashed and broke out of the encirclement, flying to the sky 15 kilometers away. She stood in the clouds and released a powerful divine sense, extending it in all directions. Her divine sense enveloped an area of 200 miles, and she knew the situation like the back of her hand. She could clearly detect that Divine Emissary Du and Divine Emissary Liu were being attacked by thousands of ghost bats in the sky 50 kilometers away. Although the two of them were covered in wounds and looked miserable, their lives were not in danger. However, their lives were not in danger for the time being, and they could still resist the attacks of the ghost bats. However, Granny Long was most worried about Yun Yarrow and Ji Tianxing. Her divine sense scanned an area of 200 miles, but she could not find any trace of the two. That's strange. Where are Yun Yarrow and Tianxing? With their strength and means, they won't die even if the flying boat is destroyed. Granny Long frowned and murmured worriedly. She flew quickly in the sky, releasing her divine sense to search every inch of the area. 30 seconds later, she had searched the entire area, but she still could not find Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow. However, she could detect that Yun Yarrow and Ji Tianxing's aura remained in the sky, and there were some clues. Granny Long analyzed for a moment with these clues and came to a conclusion. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow were not killed by the ghost bats. They must have been abducted by the ghost bat. Granny Long quickly took out an ancient bronze compass and used a secret technique to detect Yun Yarrow's location and traces. In the depths of a certain mountain range in the Mirage Mountain Range, there was a dark and gloomy cave hidden in the underground rock layer, and it was filled with cold and bloody demonic chi. The entrance of the cave was guarded by two huge demonic beasts. The two demonic beasts had strength at the seventh firmament essence soul realm. They had ferocious appearances and their bodies were purplish-black with hints of red. They exuded an intense bloodlust. In the deepest part of the cave, there was a spacious cave with a radius of several hundred feet. The ceiling of the cave was inlaid with a few scattered moonstones, emitting a soft silver light, bringing a trace of gloomy light to the cave. Two figures, one tall and one short, were standing in the cave, talking in low voices. The leader was a brawny man in black armor who was more than 2 meters tall and had a body as sturdy as an iron tower. This person's skin was dark and purple, and his entire body was covered with thick hair. He wore a cold black armor and a scarlet cape. His broad face was dark purple in color, and his facial features were squarish. He was different from ordinary people. His thick eyebrows and large eyes had a pair of dark purple pupils that flickered with frightening ferocity. Without a doubt, this black-armored man was a devil race powerhouse. His strength had reached the peak of the crossing calamity realm, and he was not far from the martial sage realm. The short one standing beside him was a bald child who was 1 meter tall and covered in ghostly tattoos. It was Ghost Boy. Previously, in the ruins of deity, his physical body had been destroyed by Ji Tianxing and he had escaped with only a primordial spirit. At that moment, he had reformed his physical body and it was exactly the same as before. However, if one took a closer look, one would realize that his physical body was still slightly damaged and his strength was slightly weak. Obviously, he had not recovered his primordial spirit and his strength had dropped significantly. It would take a few more decades for him to return to normal. Demon King Xiao Yi, are you confident in this mission? You should know that Ji Tianxing is not easy to deal with. He has Granny Long of Luotian Mountain with him. Granny Long is a martial sage. If our plan fails, not only will we not be able to complete the mission, but we may also be in danger. Ghost Boy looked at the black-armored man beside him and said in a serious tone. The black-armored man, who was called Demon King Xiao Yi, curled his lips in disdain and revealed a contemptuous smile. Ghost Boy, you have met Ji Tianxing twice before and you have not been able to kill him. You were even severely injured by him. I think you are scared out of your wits, right? You are actually afraid of an Essence Soul Realm worm? Ghost Boy frowned and suppressed his shame and anger. He said in a deep voice, Xiao Yi, Ji Tianxing has the Kenshin bloodline. You must not underestimate him. Moreover, I am most worried about Granny Long. She is a martial sage after all. Xiao Yi shook the scarlet cloak on his back and said with a sneer, as the third demon lord, do you think that I would be as stupid as you when doing things? My 30,000 ghost bats will definitely be able to hold back Granny Long and the 2 divine envoys and capture Ji Tianxing. Anyway, our target is Ji Tianxing. As long as we complete the mission before Granny Long arrives, we will have succeeded. Ghost Boy nodded and said, since you are so confident, that is for the best. However, you must remember that we are in the territory of Luoshui Divine Kingdom. We must end the battle quickly in order to escape unscathed. Demon King Xiao Yi only grinned and did not say anything. His expression was arrogant and confident. At that moment, a gust of wind suddenly blew in the empty and dark cave. Swoosh! A huge black vortex appeared out of thin air in the cave and spun rapidly. Here it comes! Demon King Xiao Yi raised his eyebrows and sneered when he saw the black vortex. He waved his hand and shot out a black light. He used a secret technique to dispel the black vortex. Swoosh! Swoosh! The huge black vortex quickly disintegrated into thousands of ghost bats and flew toward Demon King Xiao Yi like a flock of birds returning to the forest. In the blink of an eye, the thousands of ghost bats shrunk and turned into black lights the size of fingernails. They entered Demon King Xiao Yi's body. On the scarlet cloak draped over his shoulders, a dense pattern of black birds immediately appeared. After the black light dissipated, 2 figures fell from the sky and crashed into the ground of the cave. The 2 figures were a man and a woman. The man was handsome and heroic, while the woman was cold and holy. They were Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. Demon King Xiao Yi waved his hands and shot out hundreds of black lights toward the 2 of them. Swoosh! 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 In the blink of an eye, the hundreds of black lights tied up Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao like ropes. Their spiritual energy and primordial spirits were restrained. They could not move like puppets and were suspended in the middle of the cave. However, the 2 of them glared angrily at Demon King Xiao Yi and Ghost Child. Seeing that Ghost Child was also present, Ji Tianxing was furious and cursed. Ghost Child! It's you, you disgusting monster. Last time in the ruins of God, I destroyed your physical body with my own hands, but you were lucky enough to escape. I didn't expect that a monster like you would dare to come to the Luoshui divine kingdom and behave so atrociously. You're asking for death. Ghost Child glared at Ji Tianxing with cold resentment in his eyes. He sneered and said, "Let's see where you can run to this time, Ji Tianxing. You're dead for sure." Devil King Owl Knight walked up to Ji Tianxing and sized him up. Then, he sneered and said with a sarcastic tone, "I thought that the person who could defeat Ghost Boy twice and severely injure him must be an incredible expert." Chapter 17:21. Demon King Xiao Yi's tone was full of contempt and sarcasm. The way he sized up Ji Tianxing was also like he was looking at an ant. Ji Tianxing was furious, and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. Ghost Child was also furious, but he didn't dare to do anything to Demon King Xiao Yi, so he could only hold it in. Demon King Xiao Yi, Ji Tianxing isn't an ordinary person. You can't let your guard down. Demon King Xiao Yi didn't take his words to heart at all, and his lips curled into a contemptuous sneer. This monarch can crush this kind of ant-like character to death with a single finger. Demon King Xiao Yi stretched out his broad right hand as he spoke. His palm was filled with dense black light as he grabbed at Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing was bound by the black light rope and couldn't move at all, let alone resist. Strands of black light of death drilled into his chest and immediately began to spread. The skin and flesh on his chest were corroded by the black light of death and turned into black ashes, scattering on the ground. His flesh and bones were corroded bit by bit, making sizzling sounds. In the blink of an eye, a bowl-sized bloody hole appeared in Ji Tianxing's chest, revealing the pale golden bones inside. Ji Tianxing was in so much pain that he wanted to die. His body twitched violently, and his face was distorted. However, he clenched his teeth and only let out a few painful groans. He didn't scream or beg for mercy. Demon King Xiao Yi saw that he was so stubborn and sneered, "Ha ha ha, you can endure it so well? I have a whole new level of respect for your endurance and determination. You little worm, you're indeed qualified for me to deal with you personally." Then, the black light in his palm became denser, and its power doubled. Along with a light sizzling noise, Ji Tianxing's skin and flesh started to fester and corrode, turning into a large cloud of black ashes. The pain doubled, and Ji Tianxing's body twitched. His nerves were twisted and numb. Yun Yarrow watched Ji Tianxing being tortured from the side. She was angry and distressed, and her eyes were filled with killing intent. However, she was restrained and couldn't move. She couldn't even open her mouth to speak or make a sound. She could only watch Ji Tianxing being tortured. She was so angry that her eyes almost popped out, but there was nothing she could do. Ghost Child saw this and couldn't help but frown. He reminded Demon King Xiao Yi, "Demon King Xiao Yi, since Ji Tianxing is an ant in your eyes, it's meaningless for you to torture him. We're short on time, don't forget our mission. If this drags on for too long, when Granny Long arrives, all our efforts will be in vain." Demon King Owl Knight's hand paused for a moment, and he answered without turning his head, "Ghost Child, don't forget who you are. Not only did you fail to capture Ji Tianxing, you were also heavily injured by him and lost your physical body. And you. Right now, you are a criminal, and this monarch is the executor of this operation. I'm the one who decides what to do. You're just a guide." Not only did Demon King Xiao Yi look down on Ji Tianxing, but he also looked down on Ghost Child. Of course, he was just saying that to show off his status. In fact, he knew that time was of the essence, and he had to complete the mission as soon as possible. He stared coldly at Ji Tianxing and ordered, "Little worm, I'll give you one chance. Hand over the Kenshin bloodline, and I'll give you a quick death." Ji Tianxing was in so much pain that he was covered in cold sweat. The veins on his forehead were popping, and his face was twisted. He slowly raised his head and stared coldly at Demon King Xiao Yi. He said word by word, "Idiot. Heart. Arrogant. Want. Damn demon, one day, I'll turn you into ashes. Ha 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 ha." Demon King Xiao Yi laughed wantonly and said cruelly, "Since you're so stubborn, I'll take it myself." As he spoke, his thick and sturdy right hand passed through the bloody hole in Ji Tianxing's chest and reached into his chest. He grabbed Ji Tianxing's heart, and a black light burst out of his palm, wildly devouring the blood in the heart. That was Ji Tianxing's blood essence, the purest bloodline. The black light pierced his heart and quickly absorbed the pale golden blood, which flowed into Demon King Xiao Yi's right palm. The boiling pale golden blood contained a sacred and majestic aura, and it emitted an extremely powerful energy wave. Ji Tianxing was in so much pain that he wished he was dead. Demon King Xiao Yi sneered maliciously, enjoying the pleasure of torturing someone. However, just as his right palm touched the pale golden Kenshin bloodline, he felt a heart-wrenching pain. TSK, 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 there was a soft sound. Half of his thick and strong right palm had been corroded by the Kenshin bloodline, and his flesh and finger bones had disappeared. Even the powerful demonic power in his palm had been purified by the Kenshin bloodline. The extreme pain made Demon King Xiao Yi retract his right hand at lightning speed, and he cried out in pain with a twisted face. No. This is impossible. His body trembled in pain, and he lowered his head in shock, looking at his right palm in disbelief. He saw that the area contaminated by the Kenshin bloodline had all disappeared. The wound was as black as charcoal, and black smoke was rising in spirals, giving off a strong burnt smell. The few drops of golden Kenshin blood also quickly returned to Ji Tianxing's heart. Demon King Xiao Yi stared at Ji Tianxing ferociously and sneered, "Ha ha ha. You're really something, you little worm. No wonder Ghost Boy was defeated by you time and time again, and you caused him to be so miserable. I didn't expect the Kenshin bloodline to be so powerful after being nurtured by you. It has already recovered some of its divinity. The gods above the 9 heavens had always been sacred and inviolable. Even if it was just a drop of God's blood, it was sacred and inviolable." Demon King Xiao Yi's expression changed, and he had no choice but to stop underestimating Ji Tianxing and treat him with caution. When Ghost Child saw that Devil Monarch Night Owl was burned by Sword God's blood, he secretly rejoiced in his misfortune. With a playful tone, he said, "I just reminded you not to underestimate Ji Tianxing." Demon King Xiao Yi's lips curled into a cold smile, and he nodded slightly. "This little worm is quite capable, but that's all. There's no mission that I can't complete." Then, a black light flashed in his left palm, and a black beetle appeared. This black and cold beetle was only the size of a walnut, and its entire body was covered in a cold and hard shell. It also had a dozen sharp claws. There were 3 dark red bloodlines on the back of the beetle, and it emitted an extremely powerful demonic aura, which was especially terrifying. When Ghost Boy saw the beetle's appearance, he was shocked and exclaimed in disbelief, "Sure, a heart-devouring bug. This is the top demonic creature of my clan, and it hasn't appeared for hundreds of years. How did you get one?" Demon King Xiao Yi sneered. "My status and methods are not something that a low-level demon king like you can imagine. You don't have to ask about the origin of the Shura heart-devouring bug. I want to use this bug to seize Ji Tianxing's Kenshin bloodline and devour his heart and soul." Chapter 1722. The black and cold Shura heart-devouring bug quickly burrowed into Ji Tianxing's body and started to absorb the Kenshin bloodline. The light golden god's blood had a sacred aura and power that could burn Demon King Xiao Yi. However, the Shura heart-devouring bug's body was very special. It specialized in devouring the organs, bloodline, and souls of powerhouses. It burrowed into Ji Tianxing's heart and desperately absorbed the Kenshin bloodline. When the golden god's blood touched it, it felt extremely painful and irritable. Its body kept trembling. However, it was not corroded into ashes by the god's blood. It could actually resist the power of the god's blood. A piercing pain spread throughout Ji Tianxing's body, causing him to tremble violently. Cold sweat poured down like rain. His face was as pale as paper. His face was also distorted, and he kept groaning in pain. This was a true heart-devouring pain. Yun Yarrow was extremely anxious and angry. Her body was also trembling, and tears immediately flowed out of her eyes. She also felt the pain and torture Ji Tianxing was going through. She wanted nothing more than to tear Demon King Xiao Yi into pieces and kill him. However, the black rope kept tightening and binding her tightly. It sealed her magic power and soul, making it impossible for her to resist or save Ji Tianxing. Demon King Xiao Yi laughed excitedly when he saw Ji Tianxing's incomparable pain. "Ha ha ha! Little worm, weren't you very stubborn just now? Now that you know what I'm capable of, Have you tasted the feeling of living a life worse than death? But don't worry, the pain will end soon. In at most an hour, the Shura heart-devouring bug will devour your heart and take your Kenshin bloodline. Then, you'll be a lowly life, and you can die in pain. Demon King Xiao Yi looked down at Ji Tianxing with a cold smile. His eyes were extremely cruel and bloodthirsty. Ghost Child also stared coldly at Ji Tianxing. A carefree look flashed past his eyes. He felt that his hatred had been vented. Ji Tianxing had caused him to be in such a miserable state. He had lost all face and suffered the contempt and mockery of the other demon kings. Even if he did not kill Ji Tianxing with his own hands, being able to see Ji Tianxing die in pain was also a form of comfort for him. Time passed quietly. In the dimly lit cave, a thick smell of blood filled the air. It was filled with pain and cruelty. Ji Tianxing was tormented. His entire body was distorted, and his will was on the verge of collapse. A quarter of an hour passed. His heart had been bitten into several holes, and blood was gushing out from them. He was already on the verge of death, and was on the verge of losing consciousness. The Shura heart-devouring bug had devouring bug's bloodline had devouring blood. At this moment, the cave's blood Demon King Xiao and Demon King Xiao Yi. His demon B blood demons Demon King Xiao Yi and Ghost Child's bodies trembled. Their expressions changed. With their strength and knowledge, they could naturally tell that the two guards guarding the entrance of the Devil's Den had been killed. The raging energy was the shockwave from the battle. Both of them released their invisible divine senses and extended it toward the cave's entrance. In the next moment, both of them frowned. Their eyes turned serious. It's a white-haired old woman. She must be Luotian Mountain's Granny Long, Ghost Child said in a low voice. His eyes were filled with fear. Demon King Xiao Yi also put away his arrogance. He frowned and muttered, "That damned old woman. Even if she's a martial saint, she can't escape from the ghost bats so quickly. She only took half an hour to find this place. How is that possible?" He was very confident in the ghost bats. He was sure that the thousands of ghost bats could delay Granny Long for at least an hour. By the time Granny Long got rid of the ghost bats, even if she found Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow, it would take her 4 hours to get here. After all, the two places were 100,000 miles apart. By the time Granny Long got here, it would be too late. He had already taken the Kenshin bloodline and killed Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow. In this way, he would have succeeded and would not have to meet Granny Long. However, his plan, which he thought was perfect, was ruined just like that. He had calculated everything, but he did not expect Granny Long to find this place so quickly. After a moment of silence, Demon King Xiao Yi ordered Ghost Child, "Let's go. Follow me to meet that old woman." "So what if she's a martial saint? I'm also a half-step martial saint. I've long wanted to challenge a real martial saint." As he spoke, he waved his wide scarlet cloak and strode toward the cave's entrance. Ghost Child hesitated for a moment. He pointed at Ji Tianxing and said, "Demon King Xiao Yi, you go and stop Granny Long. Just delay her for 45 minutes. I'll stay here to guard Ji Tianxing in case something happens and our plan fails." Demon King Xiao Yi turned his head and looked at him with disdain. He sneered and said, "Ghost Child, you're so afraid of death. You don't deserve to be the Demon King of my clan." Ghost Child's expression changed immediately. He quickly waved his hand and explained, "You've misunderstood. I'm not afraid of Granny Long. I just don't want anything to go wrong with the plan. Ji Tianxing is very cunning." "Shut up." Demon King Xiao Yi shouted angrily, "Don't try to explain. Ji Tianxing is already imprisoned by my death chain. His heart is almost eaten by the heart-devouring worms. He only has one breath left and is about to die. What accident can happen? If you're afraid, you can leave now. I'm ashamed to be with you." Since Demon King Xiao Yi had said such harsh words, Ghost Child could only nod his head and agree no matter how unwilling he was. "I'll go with you." After saying that, Ghost Child took out 2 pitch-black swords and flew out with Demon King Xiao Yi. Swoosh! With a flash of black light, the 2 figures immediately disappeared outside the cave and rushed to the entrance. In the dark cave, Only Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow were left. Yun Yarrow had been struggling with all her might. She silently circulated her energy and tried to break free from the imprisonment of the death chain. However, her energy was sealed and she couldn't break free at all. She couldn't speak and could only look at Ji Tianxing. She opened her teary eyes and encouraged and comforted him with her gaze. After a while, the sound of an intense battle came from outside the demon's cave. Boom! Boom! The muffled sounds kept coming and reverberated in the demon's cave. The entire mountain range and the ground shook violently. The ceiling of the cave collapsed and many rocks and soil fell. Ji Tianxing, who was in extreme pain and almost unconscious, immediately opened his eyes when he heard the loud noises coming from outside the demon's cave. No matter how much pain he was enduring, his eyes were still clear. He remained calm and wise. Burial of heaven, lend me a hand. He used his divine thought to call out in his mind. Chapter 1723. Demon King Xiao Yi thought that everything would be fine as long as he imprisoned Ji Tianxing with the chains of death. Ji Tianxing's Dharma power and essence soul had been sealed. He couldn't use any strength at all. He was a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Yun Yarrow's situation was like that. She had no way to escape. But Ji Tianxing was different. He couldn't move or resist, but the burial of heaven could. Demon King Xiao Yi had calculated everything and thought that his plan was perfect. He didn't expect Ji Tianxing to have a divine sword. It was the burial of heaven's sword that had self-awareness and could move on its own. Swoosh! The divine sword appeared out of nowhere, emitting a dazzling cold light. Dozens of black light chains immediately swept toward the divine sword as if they had a mind of their own, trying to suppress it. However, the black light chains couldn't block the sharpness of the burial of heaven's sword. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. After a dazzling sword light flashed past, the dozens of black light chains were cut apart. The imprisonment of the chains of death was temporarily broken and lost control. Ji Tianxing, who had been accumulating his power for a long time, made a prompt decision and burst out his power. With a swoosh, he went through the gap and escaped from the death chain. The next moment, he staggered and landed in the cave. He covered his chest with a pale face and spat out a mouthful of blood. Countless chains of death flew toward him like poisonous snakes, trying to imprison him again. This time, he was prepared. He immediately activated the power of the heaven-mending orb and sent out a dazzling white light with his palm. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Wherever the sacred white light passed, the chains of death were corroded and purified. They turned into countless pieces and scattered on the ground. Ji Tianxing breathed heavily. Dark red blood flowed out of his mouth and nose again. His heart was severely injured, and his Kenshin bloodline was flowing out. He was very weak and could faint at any time. However, he gritted his teeth and didn't collapse with his strong willpower. He activated the technique and activated the power of the heaven-mending orb. A dense white light gushed out and flowed towards his heart. The holy white light immediately enveloped his chest, protecting his incomplete and bleeding heart, isolating him from the Azura heart-devouring bug. Although the sacred white light could suppress the Shura heart-devouring insect and make it unable to move, the sacred white light could only suppress the Shura heart-devouring insect. However, the holy white light was unable to purify the Shura heart-devouring bug for the time being. Being able to protect his heart from being damaged was already his limit. As for killing and expelling the Azura heart-devouring insects, that was a very troublesome and time-consuming task. He definitely couldn't do it now. Ji Tianxing could only use the white light to protect his heart, temporarily ignoring the Shura heart-devouring worm. He staggered towards Yun Yarrow and stopped in front of Yun Yarrow. When Yun Yarrow saw that he had successfully escaped, she was pleasantly surprised and revealed a look of relief. Ji Tianxing arrived in front of her. He raised his palms and unleashed a holy white light that enveloped her body. Immediately, the death chains wrapped around her body quickly collapsed and were purified by the holy white light. In just 2 short breaths, Yun Yarrow also safely escaped. She finally regained her ability to speak and move. She couldn't wait to support Ji Tianxing and asked with concern, Tianxing, Tianxing, how do you feel? Can you still hold on? As she spoke, she also activated the longevity divine power with all her might, releasing a dense dark green light that poured into Ji Tianxing's body. With the majestic longevity divine power, Ji Tianxing quickly recovered his vitality. His essence, energy, and spirit were obviously much better. His face was no longer as pale as paper, and the bowl-sized bloody hole on his chest was also healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. However, he didn't circulate his energy to heal himself. He quickly waved his hand at Yun Yaro and said, "Yaro Yaro, don't worry about me. I won't die yet. Granny Long has come to save us and is fighting with 2 demon monarchs. The most important thing now is to escape from this devil's den." Yun Yaro quickly nodded and said, "All right. I'll take you away now. When we reach a safe place, I'll heal you." After saying that, she supported Ji Tianxing with both hands and quickly ran out of the cave. Enduring the excruciating pain, Ji Tianxing ran madly through the pitch-black tunnel. He and Yun Yaro only used a few dozen breaths to run through the dark tunnel that was 5 miles long. When the two of them reached the entrance of the cave, they finally saw their surroundings clearly. The cave entrance had been destroyed by the aftermath of the battle, and more than half of it had collapsed. More than a dozen huge rocks and dust had blocked more than half of the cave entrance. The cave entrance was located at the foot of the mountain, in a lush forest. It was already evening, and night was about to fall. The dark green forest outside the cave entrance had already been destroyed by the battle. The surrounding dozens of miles were in ruins. Demon Monarch Owl Knight and Granny Long had already moved their battlefield. They were fighting in the sky 100 miles away from the Devil's Den. Muffled explosions could be heard continuously, and dazzling lights shone continuously in the sky. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yaro looked up at the sky and saw what was going on. Granny Long was displaying her might. She cast a powerful spell that could destroy heaven and earth, completely suppressing Demon Monarch Owl Knight and forcing him to retreat. However, Demon Monarch Owl Knight had mastered many mysterious techniques and was almost immortal. He could always dodge the fatal attacks. Although he was severely injured, he could still keep Granny Long busy and prevent her from escaping. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yaro were relieved. "Tianxing, Granny Long is enough to deal with 2 demon monarchs. We don't have to worry about her. Yes, after we leave this place, Granny Long will have nothing to worry about. She might even kill Demon Monarch Owl Knight." As they spoke, the two of them stepped over the ruins and flew into the sky, escaping in another direction. However, at this moment, a huge black shadow descended from the sky and charged toward the two of them with a murderous aura. Swoosh! The black shadow was a ferocious-looking giant that was 30 meters tall. Its entire body was pitch black and covered in dense purple hair. Its body was extremely sturdy and muscular. The huge muscles were like pieces of black rock, containing explosive power. There were a few bloody holes on its body, and there were a few hideous wounds on its chest and back. Purple demonic blood kept oozing out of them. Its scarlet eyes flickered with raging flames of anger and exuded a terrifying murderous aura. "Ji Tianxing, don't even think about escaping this time." The giant roared loudly. Its fists were like 2 balls of blood-red flames as it charged toward Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing immediately recognized that the giant was Ghost Child's transformation. Seeing Ghost Child charging toward him with murderous intent, his murderous intent was also ignited. It was as if there was a fire burning in his chest. "Ghost Child, you were lucky enough to escape last time. This time, you will definitely die." As he roared, Ji Tianxing formed sword fingers with his hands and performed a mysterious spell. He controlled the burial of heaven to attack Ghost Child. Broken Moon Sword. Vast and mighty dharmic powers were injected into the burial of heaven, causing it to become a huge sword that was hundreds of meters long. It slashed toward Ghost Child. Bam! Chapter 1724. Even someone as powerful as Ghost Child was sent flying by the burial of heaven, crashing into the ruins 5 kilometers away. Bam! A huge crater appeared in the ruins as dust and rubble splattered everywhere. Ghost Child struggled a few times before crawling out of the crater and flying back into the sky. His arms hung by his sides as they were bent at odd angles. His fists had gaping wounds that were dripping with blood. Back in the ruins of gods, Ji Tianxing was able to destroy his body and severely injure him. Now, he had yet to recover his yuan qi and his strength was greatly weakened. However, Ji Tianxing was stronger than before. He had long broken through from the 7th Firmament Essence Soul Realm to the 9th Firmament Essence Soul Realm. As a result, Ghost Child was injured after exchanging a single blow with Ji Tianxing. Rage and killing intent warped Ghost Child's face, making him look especially ferocious. Little bastard, your Kenshin bloodline has already been devoured. Your life is on the line, yet you still dare fight me. He glared coldly at Ji Tianxing as he bellowed angrily. This sentence was meant to probe Ji Tianxing's strength. Ghost Child found it unbelievable. How did Ji Tianxing escape? How did he survive until now despite having his heart devoured by the Shura heart-devouring worm? However, Ji Tianxing did not waste his breath. He held the Burial of Heaven with both hands as he charged at Ghost Child with all his strength. Heaven-splitting strike. Amidst his angry roar, the Burial of Heaven emitted a cold beam that shot into the sky. It condensed into a 1,000-foot-long golden sword. This strike gathered Ji Tianxing's essence, vitality, and spirit, as well as a sliver of sword intent. In just an instant, the gigantic sword cleaved at Ghost Child's head. Ghost Child's expression changed drastically as he did not hesitate to use teleportation, vanishing from the sky with a whoosh. He transformed into a blob of black fiendish gas and dissipated with a bang. The next moment, he appeared in the sky 5 kilometers away. However, even if he teleported to escape, he still could not avoid Ji Tianxing's sword. The giant golden sword locked onto his divine soul aura and also streaked across the sky for 10 miles, striking him with a loud boom. Boom! A deafening explosion resounded through the clouds. Ghost Child's magic shield was shattered by the great sword. Purple blood splattered out of his head as he fell from the sky and crashed into the ruins. Another deep crater was smashed into the ground. Many cracks opened up, and a large amount of soil splashed out. Ghost Child was covered in blood as he lay in the pit, twitching in pain. Half of his body was covered in mud. Half of his huge head had been chopped off by the huge sword. Even his left shoulder and left arm had been chopped off by the huge sword. Brain matter, bones, and internal organs were exposed from the wound, and purple-red blood was still gushing out. Despite suffering such terrible injuries, Ghost Child was still alive. His body could still move. However, the incomparable pain made him so angry that he roared hysterically. Ji Tianxing, you little bastard, I will tear you apart. As he roared, Ghost Child took out a pitch-black saber and slashed out a shocking saber light with all his strength. Heavenly Slaughter Ghost Blade. The 100-meter-long black light demonic blade slashed down from the sky towards Ji Tianxing with a destructive power and unparalleled killing intent. Ji Tianxing was fearless. He stared at Ghost Child with a cold expression and raised his left palm. Ghost Child, your time of death has come. As his cold and emotionless voice sounded, endless golden divine flames spewed out from his left palm. The divine flames immediately condensed into a 10-meter-long golden spear. With an unparalleled destructive power, it stabbed towards Ghost Child. God-slaying spear. Kaboom! The invincible golden divine spear collided with the destructive black saber light. A loud sound that shook the world exploded like thunder. At that moment, the golden divine light illuminated the sky and the sacred brilliance sprinkled across the sky. The pitch-black black light demonic blade was shattered on the spot and shattered into black light fragments. Ghost Child's trump card was no match for Ji Tianxing's trump card. After the god-slaying spear destroyed the black light demonic blade, its power did not diminish at all. It instantly pierced Ghost Child's chest. He was pierced through the chest by the god-slaying spear on the spot. The long spear tip was exposed on his back. The incomparably powerful impact slammed into Ghost Child, causing him to fly out involuntarily. Immediately after, the god-slaying spear exploded with a bang. A huge golden mushroom cloud rose in the air. Bang! With this earth-shattering sound, Ghost Child's body was blown to pieces on the spot. Dark purple blood fell from the sky like a rainstorm and sprinkled on the ruins. Ghost Child's body was destroyed by Ji Tianxing again. Moreover, Ghost Child's primordial spirit did not have time to escape. It was blown to pieces by the god-slaying spear and scattered in the sky. With his primordial spirit destroyed, he was, of course, completely dead. Ji Tianxing did as he said. He really killed Ghost Child. After a long time, the golden mushroom cloud in the sky gradually dissipated. The golden and resplendent sky gradually returned to its gloomy state. Night finally came. The world was covered in darkness. Ji Tianxing heaved a sigh of relief and withdrew his left hand. He looked up at the sky and shot out a beam of golden light with his hand. He caught the scattered primordial spirit fragments in his palm. Then, he activated the power of the heaven-mending pearl to purify the demonic qi in the primordial spirit fragments. After the demonic qi was eliminated, he gave the primordial spirit fragments to the burial of heaven. After doing all this, he put away the sword of the burial of heaven and said to Yun Yarrow beside him, "Let's go." Yun Yarrow nodded. She looked up at the night sky 100 miles away. Then, she helped him into the sky and flew into the distance. 100 miles away, Demon King Xiao Yi was still fighting with Granny Long. However, he was already at the end of his rope and could not hold on. He was beaten by Granny Long until he was covered in wounds. Demon King Xiao Yi had also seen the battle between Ghost Child and Ji Tianxing. Now, seeing that Ghost Child was killed by Ji Tianxing, he was furious and anxious to the extreme. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow had escaped. His plan had failed at the last step and had completely failed. At this point, it was meaningless to continue fighting with Granny Long except to die. Therefore, after a few feints, Demon King Xiao Yi did not hesitate to use dozens of years of his lifespan to use the blood escape secret technique. He waved his palms and used the secret technique, forming a mysterious purple seal. Then, he opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of essence blood, splashing it on the purple seal. Whoosh! Thousands of mysterious seals immediately formed a blood-red door of light under the influence of the essence blood. The door of light stretched across the sky, emitting a powerful and mysterious spatial power. Demon King Xiao Yi's vitality was greatly damaged. He staggered into the blood-red door and immediately disappeared. Granny Long was furious. She attacked with her palm, trying to stop Demon King Xiao Yi from escaping. However, the blood-red door of light disappeared instantly. When Granny Long rushed over, Demon King Xiao Yi had successfully escaped and teleported tens of thousands of miles away. Granny Long snorted angrily and turned to leave. Earlier, her divine sense had detected that Yun Yarrow helped Ji Tianxing escape from the underground demon's den. Moreover, Ji Tianxing had killed Ghost Child. Chapter 1725. At the peak of a 1,000-foot-tall mountain outside the Phantom Mountain Range, there was a huge green millstone in the middle of a lush forest. Yun Yarrow stood next to the boulder and looked worriedly at Ji Tianxing, who was lying on the boulder. She was channeling her energy into Ji Tianxing's body, channeling the dark green longevity god force into his body. At that moment, Ji Tianxing was lying on the millstone. His entire body was burning red and trembling. Previously, he had been tortured by Demon King Owl Knight, and his heart had been eaten by the Azura heart-devouring worm. Almost a third of his Kenshin bloodline had been devoured. After that, he had escaped with Yun Yarrow but was intercepted by Ghost Child. He had been forced to fight Ghost Child. The repeated encounters had almost depleted his strength. His body was getting weaker and weaker, and his injuries were worsening. When Yun Yarrow brought him out of the demon's den and flew here, he could no longer hold on and had completely lost consciousness. Fortunately, Yun Yarrow had channeled her longevity divine power into him to maintain his life. Otherwise, he would have died long ago. While Yun Yarrow was channeling her powers to save Ji Tianxing, she was also praying silently in her heart that Grandma Long would arrive soon. Under the night sky, the mountain peak was silent. There was only a gentle breeze blowing. However, Yun Yarrow was filled with anxiety and worry. Fine beads of sweat appeared on her forehead. Time seemed to pass very slowly. After a long while, a 5-colored light flew over from the night sky. Whoosh! The multicolored light landed on the mountain range and landed beside Yun Yarrow. As the light dissipated, Grandma Long's figure appeared. Her robes were wrinkled, and her white hair was a little messy. Her old face was filled with anxiety. After landing, Her gaze landed on Ji Tianxing. She asked Yun Yarrow in a concerned tone. Yun Yarrow, you said in your transmission jade slip that Ji Tianxing was seriously injured and unconscious. His life is in danger. Don't you have the longevity divine power that can bring the dead back to life? What the hell is going on? Yun Yarrow gave Ji Tianxing her godly power as she explained to Granny Long what had happened. After Granny Long heard this, she was dumbfounded and showed a shocked expression. What? Ji Tianxing actually has Kenshin blood? Was it the Kenshin who had fallen 1,000 years ago? If this was true, then it was truly inconceivable. No wonder this kid's talent is so outstanding that he can be called the #1 genius of the 3 divine kingdoms. In a moment of panic, Yun Yarrow casually mentioned that Ji Tianxing possessed the Kenshin bloodline when she told them what had happened. Hearing Granny Long's words, she realized that she had misspoken and immediately regretted it. However, after thinking about it, Granny Long was a trustworthy person. Even if they knew this secret, it wouldn't be detrimental to Ji Tianxing. Therefore, she nodded and said, "That's right. The leader of the demon clan has always wanted to snatch the Kenshin bloodline and sees Tianxing as his mortal enemy. In order to snatch the Kenshin bloodline, the demon clan would do anything, and their methods are so vicious that it makes one's hair stand on end. Demon King Xiao Yi's Azura heart devouring worm is still in Tianxing's heart. You must think of a way to save him." Granny Long then regained her senses and suppressed the shock in her heart. She cursed angrily, "D*MN Demon King Xiao Yi, he is so cruel and vicious. In order to snatch Ji Tianxing's Kenshin bloodline, he actually used the extremely vicious Azura heart devouring worm. This demonic creature is one of the top evil creatures in the Ghost Clan, and it can even poison a martial sage. It is said that 1,000 years ago, Emperor Tian Wu was implanted with the Azura heart devouring worm by the 3 great demon sages. His heart and flesh were devoured and he died a horrible death. At the mention of the Azura heart devouring worm, Granny Long looked fearful and her eyes were filled with anger. Yun Yarrow understood what Granny Long meant and she asked anxiously, "Granny Long, do you mean that you are unable to save Tianxing?" Granny Long looked grave and sighed. She then nodded and said, "Although this result has disappointed you, I am not confident that I can get rid of the Azura heart devouring worm. I'll check his injuries first and try my best." After speaking, she raised her palms and shot out a ray of white light into Ji Tianxing's body. She closed her eyes and focused on sensing the condition of Ji Tianxing's body. After 10 breaths, she finished checking on Su Mo and opened her eyes. Her gaze softened. "Yun Yarrow, you don't have to worry. Tianxing's body is fine. The most serious injury is that his heart is damaged and has been taken over by the Azura heart devouring worm. However, even though he was unconscious, there was a divine power protecting his heart the entire time. That vicious Azura heart devouring worm is trapped in his heart for the time being and can't continue to do evil. The immortality divine power you just transferred to him can also maintain the vitality of his body. It won't die for 3 to 5 days." Hearing this, Yun Yarrow was startled for a moment. Then, her eyes widened with deep worry. "Granny Long, could it be that Tianxing's heart can no longer maintain the life of his body?" Granny Long nodded with a heavy expression and explained, "His heart is too damaged and has stopped working. If he were an ordinary martial artist, his body would have died. But Tianxing's body is special, and he has the immortality divine power to provide vitality. So, he can still live for a few days." Yun Yarrow panicked and begged anxiously, "Granny Long, Tianxing's body has been tempered thousands of times. It is a rare treasure body. It can't be destroyed like this. Once his body is destroyed, he will lose the Kenshin bloodline and his future in martial arts will be ruined. No matter what, please save his life. You can't let him." Before Yun Yarrow could finish, Granny Long interrupted her and comforted her with a kind voice, "Yun Yarrow, don't worry. Tianxing is a disciple of Luotian Mountain and a god's disciple that the Divine Master thinks highly of. Of course, I will do my best to save him. Although I may not be able to save him with my strength and means, there is someone who can save him. However, there is someone who can definitely save him and will definitely be willing to save him." "Who is it?" Yun Yarrow looked like a drowning person who saw a life-saving straw. Her eyes glowed with a strong desire. Granny Long smiled and said, "Let's go back to Luotian Mountain first. I promise you that I won't let anything happen to Tianxing." After saying that, Granny Long took out a few talismans from her interspatial ring and used them to teleport. Flowing light talisman. She cast a golden talisman. The talisman turned into a golden flowing light and enveloped her, Yun Yarrow, and Ji Tianxing. Then, the golden flowing light flew into the night sky and flew towards Luotian Mountain at an unparalleled speed. In just one night, the golden flowing light flew 1/3 of the way before it dissipated. Granny Long used the second flowing light talisman and brought Yun Yarrow and Ji Tianxing to continue their journey. Originally, it would take 5 days and 5 nights to travel from Mirage Mountain to Luotian Mountain. Chapter 1726. In a daze, Ji Tianxing regained some of his consciousness. He felt as if he had woken up, but he could not open his eyes and his consciousness was hazy. This made him understand that he had not really woken up and was still in a deep sleep. But in the depths of his mind, clear and complete images kept appearing, as if they were in a dream. He saw that he was in a dazzling palace. This palace was located in the clouds, surrounded by a sea of white clouds. It was like a heavenly palace, isolated from the rest of the world. The interior of the palace was richly ornamented, with golden railings and jade bricks. Everywhere was luxurious and noble. In the depths of the palace, there was a large and exquisitely decorated secret room. The secret room was dimly lit. The walls and floor were inlaid with precious gems, forming a vast and mysterious array, exuding a sacred and majestic aura. In the corner of the secret room, there was a pool of water about 3 feet wide. The pool was filled with icy blue water, with white smoke rising in spirals, exuding an icy cold air. And he himself was lying flat in the icy blue pool, with his eyes closed. There was a hint of pain between his brows. His whole body was boiling red, exuding a terrifyingly high temperature, like a red-hot soldering iron. The extremely high temperature actually steamed the icy water in the pool, causing steam to rise and boil. Vaguely, Ji Tianxing's gaze pierced through the curling mist and saw a graceful woman dressed in an icy blue long dress standing beside the cold pool. The hazy steam covered her face, making Ji Tianxing unable to see her face clearly. But her figure was slender and graceful, her temperament was graceful like water, exuding a noble and sacred aura, like a fairy from the 9th heaven. At this moment, she was staring at Ji Tianxing, stretching out her fair and tender hands, forming a seal to release a 5-colored divine light, which was injected into Ji Tianxing's body. Ji Tianxing's chest was enveloped by a ball of 5-colored divine light, and it was quietly changing. Even though it was a dream, Ji Tianxing did not feel any pain, as if his chest and heart had never been injured. He could only feel that the 5-colored divine light was emitting a cool aura, causing the heat in his body to dissipate. He tried his best to widen his eyes, trying to see through the hazy mist and see the face of the woman in the blue dress. However, the mist continued to rise, blocking his line of sight. The face of the woman in the blue dress seemed to be covered by a layer of hazy gauze, making it impossible for Ji Tianxing to see clearly. Ji Tianxing's consciousness became more and more blurry. Unknowingly, he fell into a deep sleep. The dream in the depths of his mind also dissipated. He didn't know how long he had been asleep or what he had experienced. It could be a day, a month, or a few months. After a long time, his consciousness finally awakened from his deep sleep. He finally regained his senses and was truly awake. He only felt that his eyelids were very heavy. It took him a long time to gradually open his eyes. What came into view was a large bed inlaid with sandalwood and jade, with white gauze curtains hanging on all sides. He was lying on a warm and wide bed, covered with a light golden brocade quilt. The air was filled with a faint fragrance. It was the scent that he was most familiar with and was most attached to. He immediately realized that he was in Yun Yarrow's room. He turned his head slightly to look at the side of the bed. Sure enough, he saw a graceful figure in a white dress sitting at a table not far away. Just by looking at the back, he could tell that it was Yun Yarrow. Yun Yarrow sat quietly at the table with one hand supporting her chin. She stared at the cup of spirit tea on the table in a daze. The tea had already turned cold, but the cup was still full. She hadn't taken a sip. Seeing Yun Yarrow by his side, Ji Tianxing's mind calmed down, and a trace of warmth welled up in his heart. He lowered his head to look at his chest and saw that it had returned to its original state under the white robe. There wasn't even a scar left. He calmed his heart and felt for a moment. His chest was also normal. There wasn't any pain or discomfort. There was no doubt that his injuries had healed. The Azura heart-devouring worm that had drilled into his heart had long been removed. He slowly raised his body and sat up bit by bit with his hands on the quilt. Other than his head being a little dizzy, he didn't feel any discomfort from head to toe. His spirit and magic power were also in peak condition. As soon as he sat up, Yun Yao, who was in a daze and deep in thought, sensed the movement and was immediately awakened. She turned her head to look at Ji Tianxing. Seeing that Ji Tianxing was awake, she immediately revealed a relieved expression. She quickly asked, "Tianxing, you're finally awake. How do you feel?" As she spoke, Yun Yao quickly came to the bedside and helped Ji Tianxing sit up. Ji Tianxing pulled her to the bedside and smiled at her. He comforted her. "Don't worry. My injuries have all healed. I'm fine now." Yun Yao sized him up. Seeing that he was indeed normal, she was slightly relieved. "By the way, Tianxing, a part of your Kenshin bloodline was devoured by the Azura heart-devouring worm. How are you now? Have you recovered your Kenshin bloodline?" Ji Tianxing nodded. "I've completely recovered. The devoured divine blood has also been purified and returned to my body. By the way, my heart was destroyed and my body was almost dead. The Azura heart-devouring worm is a rare and powerful devil of the demon race. It's very difficult to deal with. Yao, do you know who saved me?" "This." Yun Yao was startled. She shook her head and said, "After Granny Long brought us back to Luotian Mountain, she asked me to stay in Cloudwater Palace to recuperate. She brought you alone and left Luotian Mountain for a few days. I don't know where she went. By the time she brought you back, your injuries had already healed." Ji Tianxing immediately frowned and muttered to himself. "So, Granny Long didn't tell you who saved me?" Yun Yao nodded. Granny Long seemed to be hiding something. She didn't reveal any information. "Understood." Ji Tianxing nodded. An icy blue figure appeared in his mind. He vaguely guessed a certain possibility. "By the way, Yao, how long have I been unconscious?" Yun Yao replied, "You were already unconscious when we left Mirage Mountain. If we count from that day, you've been unconscious for 10 days. I've been unconscious for so long." Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and continued to ask, "What about Divine Emissary Du and Divine Emissary Liu? Are they all right?" Yun Yao shook her head. "They're fine. Although they suffered heavy injuries, they've returned safely." Ji Tianxing recalled what happened 10 days ago. His eyes were filled with hatred and killing intent. "What about Demon Monarch Xiao Yi? Did Granny Long kill him?" "This, he didn't." Yun Yao showed a regretful expression and explained, "Demon Monarch Xiao Yi wasn't Granny Long's match. He was beaten black and blue. After you killed Ghost Child, Demon Monarch Xiao Yi saw that the situation was bad and used a secret technique to escape. At that time, Granny Long was worried about our safety and chased after us. She didn't pursue Demon Monarch Xiao Yi." Chapter 17:27. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao talked for a long time. Through Yun Yao's narration, he knew what happened in the past 10 days. Granny Long took the unconscious him and left Luotian Mountain. Yun Yao and the 2 god envoys were injured, so they stayed on Luotian Mountain to recuperate. 2 days ago, Granny Long brought him back. At that time, he was still in a deep sleep, but his injuries had already healed. The Azura heart-devouring worm had also disappeared. Granny Long stayed on Luotian Mountain and didn't go out. However, she stayed in Sky Universe Palace and seemed to be busy with something. It was very mysterious. When Sky Universe Palace was mentioned, Ji Tianxing asked casually, Yao, when I first came to Luotian Mountain, you introduced Sky Universe Palace to me. It seems to be a palace of array formations, right? Everything related to array formations is there. What is Granny Long doing in Sky Universe Palace?" Yun Yao shook her head lightly and said, "I don't know either. Maybe Granny Long is setting up some array formations." Ji Tianxing thought for a moment and asked again. Granny Long said that the Divine Master gave an order for Luotian Mountain to save Yu Wei's corpse and purify the blood skeleton. However, when we went to 100 Flower Valley, the blood skeleton and the 10,000 bone demon had already disappeared. On our way back, we were attacked by Demon King Owl Knight and Ghost Child. Other than Granny Long, we were all heavily injured and suffered heavy losses. Are we just going to let this matter go? Did Granny Long mention anything about Yu Wei? Yun Yarrow thought for a moment and answered, since the Divine Master gave an order, Luotian Mountain must complete it no matter what. They will definitely try to save Yu Wei's corpse. Although Granny Long didn't reveal any plans, I'm sure that she won't give up just like that. She's probably planning something in Sky Universe Palace, right? Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said, since that's the case, let's go and take a look. Then, he and Yun Yarrow left Cloudwater Palace and rushed to Sky Universe Palace together. Sky Universe Palace was located at the northwest corner of Luotian Mountain, near the cliff. The palace occupied a large area and was built in a dignified manner. When Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow arrived outside the palace, they saw a group of golden-armored guards guarding the palace entrance. There were also 2 young geniuses who wanted to enter the Sky Universe Palace to have an audience with Granny Long, but they were stopped by the golden-armored guards outside the gate. Coincidentally, the 2 young geniuses were both God's disciples and Ji Tianxing knew one of them. It was a young man dressed in luxurious clothes. He was tall and had a graceful bearing. His name was Zhu Bin. Seeing that Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow had arrived, Zhu Bin hurriedly came forward to greet them. Eldest senior brother, eldest senior sister, long time no see. Junior brother Zhu, how have you been? Yun Yarrow nodded at him. Ji Tianxing cupped his hands and asked, Zhu Bin, why are you here? Zhu Bin explained, recently, I've been comprehending an incomplete array left behind by an ancient sage. I encountered some problems and wanted to come to the Sky Universe Palace to have an audience with Granny Long. By the way, I heard that you went to the Black Frost Empire with Granny Long and encountered an accident. You were seriously injured? Ji Tianxing nodded and said, that's true. However, my injuries have recovered. Zhu Bin hurriedly nodded and said, when everyone heard the news, they were worried about you. It's great that you're fine. Ji Tianxing chatted with him for a while and then led Yun Yarrow to the palace entrance. The golden-armored guards checked their identity badges and opened the door to let them in. Seeing this, Zhu Bin immediately frowned and asked the captain of the guards, I'm here to have an audience with Granny Long. I tried my best to explain to you, but you didn't let me in. Why did you let eldest senior brother and eldest senior sister in without a second thought? The captain of the guards glanced at him and said expressionlessly, Granny Long told us that except for the god's emissaries, Ji Tianxing, and Yun Yarrow, no one is to disturb them. Ah! Zhu Bin was stunned for a moment. Then, he smiled bitterly and turned to leave. At the same time, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow entered the Sky Universe Palace. Under the guidance of a guard, they passed through several corridors, passages, and stairs and finally arrived at the main hall on the first floor of the underground palace. The underground palace was the forbidden area of the Sky Universe Palace. It was not open to ordinary disciples and God's disciples. This place stored the secret skills of Array Dao, all kinds of precious books and treasures. In the dimly lit main hall, the floor was paved with psychic white jade. The surface of the floor was engraved with dense array patterns. Granny Long was standing in the air. She was making hand seals with both of her hands. Streaks of dazzling light were constantly injected into the ground in the middle of the main hall. In the middle of the main hall, there was a grayish-white light shield that was 1,000 feet wide. It was shining with a mysterious light and emitting a powerful aura. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow immediately understood that Granny Long was setting up a big array. The 2 of them did not disturb her. They stood quietly in the corner of the main hall and waited patiently. Fortunately, the big array was basically completed. 4 hours later, the big array was completely completed. Granny Long then stopped casting the spell. She slowly stopped and landed on the ground from the air. The grayish-white light shield that was 1,000 feet wide became round. Its power had also increased by a few levels. It was extremely powerful. Granny Long walked in front of the two of them. She looked at Ji Tianxing and asked, "Tianxing, have you recovered from your injuries?" "Yes. Thank you for saving my life." Granny Long. Ji Tianxing nodded and bowed to her. Granny Long showed a gratified smile and waved her hand. "No need to be so polite. You are a god's disciple of the Luotian mountain. It's natural for me to save you." Yun Yarrow pointed at the light shield in the middle of the main hall and asked doubtfully, "Granny Long, after you returned to the Luotian mountain, you stayed in the Sky Universe Palace to set up this big array?" Granny Long nodded and said, "Yes." Yun Yarrow asked again, "Why did you set up this big array?" Granny Long showed a meaningful smile and said mysteriously, "Of course, it has an important purpose." Yun Yarrow slightly frowned and said in a heavy tone, "The God Lord ordered us to save Yu Wei's body. But we were too late. The demon clan of the North Underworld Mountain was too arrogant. They sneaked into the divine nation and attacked us. Tianxing almost lost his life. Granny Long, are we just going to let this matter go? Don't you want to continue investigating?" Granny Long combed her white hair and said with a solemn face, "Our divine nation and the ghost clan of the North Underworld Mountain have an indelible hatred. In this operation, we suffered a great loss. Tianxing almost lost his life and lost his Kenshin bloodline. How can I just let this matter go? If I can't save Yu Wei's body, I won't have the face to see the God Lord in the future. This big array is called the Nether Passage Soul Sealing Array. It's a saint-level array that I set up with great care." Chapter 1728. Granny Long's words stunned Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow. Only then did the two of them realize that Granny Long would never give up and had come up with a new plan. However, the two of them looked at the array in the middle of the hall with puzzled expressions. "Granny Long, how can this Nether Passage Soul Sealing Array save Yu Wei's remains?" asked Ji Tianxing, puzzled. "Yu Wei was corroded to death by demonic qi," explained Granny Long in a low voice. "Her remains couldn't be buried and were refined into the evil blood skeleton. Her soul dissipated between heaven and earth and will never be reincarnated. She won't even have the chance to reincarnate. The secluded soul-sealing array that I set up can summon the scattered soul fragments of Yu Wei through her belongings and gather her remnant soul. Then, we can use her remnant soul to find her remains." Upon hearing her explanation, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow understood. It turned out that Granny Long wanted to use this method to find the missing blood skeleton. The myriad skeletal fiend and the blood skeleton have gone missing. Yun Yarrow slightly nodded and said, "If this method works, we can find the blood skeleton as soon as possible and rescue it." Ji Tianxing furrowed his brows and asked, "Granny Long, since this Nether Passage Soul Sealing Array can condense Yu Wei's remnant soul, doesn't that mean she still has a chance to be reincarnated?" "That's not the case." Granny Long quickly shook her head and explained, "This old woman only has this plan, but it may not be able to successfully gather Yu Wei's remnant soul. Besides, the remnant souls gathered by this array are actually illusory soul fragments that can never be healed, let alone reincarnated." Ji Tianxing nodded to express his understanding and sighed. "What a pity." Granny Long also felt a bit regretful and said in a heavy tone, "Yu Wei has been dead for thousands of years. It's impossible for her to be resurrected. To her, her remains can be freed and her soul can be reincarnated. That's the best result." Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow both nodded. "This old woman originally planned to tell you the plan after the spell was successfully cast," said Granny Long again. "Since you're already here, just stay here and watch. I'll cast a spell to summon Yu Wei's remnant soul." Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow wanted to help, but they didn't know much about the Nether Passage Soul Sealing Array, so they could only stand there and watch. Granny Long flew to the center of the hall and stood above the grey light shield. She took out a blood-red crystal from her interspatial ring and placed it in the middle of the array. That blood-colored crystal was none other than the one the Blood Skull had given to Ji Tianxing. After Ji Tianxing returned to the Luotian mountain, he handed the crystal to Granny Long. After that, Granny Long handed the crystal to Luo Shui Martial God. Luo Shui Martial God had observed the crystals and determined the identity of the Blood Skull. Now, the blood-red crystal appeared in Granny Long's hands. Ji Tianxing immediately understood that Granny Long must have come into contact with martial god Luo Shui. The conjecture in his mind was immediately confirmed. But Granny Long must have her reasons for deliberately hiding this information. He wouldn't expose her and could only pretend that he didn't know anything. At this time, Granny Long closed her eyes with a solemn expression and silently circulated her boundless magic power. Her robes and white hair fluttered violently. She slowly raised her palms and sent out a mysterious white light into the array's light shield. Immediately, the Nether Passage Soul Sealing Array was activated and quickly operated. Dense patterns appeared on the oval-shaped array's light shield, revealing all kinds of strange patterns. An invisible and vast power erupted from the formation and spread out in all directions, extending into the heavens and the earth. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow could both sense that the formless and mysterious power was constantly spreading between heaven and earth, as if it could cover the entire continent. The two of them stared intently at the array and watched Granny Long cast her spell. As time passed, the magic power Granny Long channeled into the array became more and more powerful. The array's light shield also lit up with an even more dazzling brilliance and emitted an even more terrifying aura. Of course, the two of them also had a deeper understanding of the Nether Passage Soul Sealing Array. Unknowingly, 4 hours had passed. Finally, a wisp of grey aura appeared in the array's light shield, faintly discernible as it floated. The blood-red crystal also lit up with a scarlet light, rising like a flame. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow's spirits were lifted, revealing a look of anticipation. Obviously, Granny Long's plan had succeeded. The Nether Passage Soul Sealing Array had successfully summoned the first wisp of remnant soul. Next, as long as the array continued to gather more grey aura, Yu Wei's remnant soul would be condensed. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow were full of anticipation as they stared intently at the array. However, as time passed, the scene in the light shield didn't change much. A full 12 hours had passed, and there was still only a wisp of grey aura in the array. Granny Long's eyes became serious, and her face was slightly pale. Her aura had obviously weakened a little. For the entire night, she had continuously activated the array. Her magic power was greatly depleted, and she was very tired. But in the end, she only managed to summon a wisp of grey aura, which was worlds apart from the result she had expected. Her exhaustion, coupled with the sense of loss, made her feel rather dejected. She persisted for another 4 hours and was really at the end of her rope. There was still only a wisp of grey aura in the Nether Passage Soul Sealing Array. Granny Long had no choice but to temporarily give up and stop the array. Whoosh! She retracted her palms and landed on the ground from the air. The dazzling white light shield also immediately returned to its original calm state, becoming dim and lightless. Granny Long took out 2 saint-level pills and consumed them. She silently circulated her energy to catalyze the medicinal efficacy and replenish her empty magic power. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow quickly rushed over and stood beside her, asking about the situation with concern. "Are you all right, Granny? How come there's only a wisp of soul aura? Is there a problem with the array?" Granny Long waved her hand and said, "I'm fine, don't worry. It's just that I've consumed too much magic power and need to replenish it. As for this array, I've meticulously arranged it according to the records in the ancient books. There shouldn't be any problem. There's no problem with the array, and we also have Yu Wei's relics. But what's the problem?" Granny Long frowned and stared at the array's light shield, revealing a trace of distress and doubt. Ji Tianxing thought for a moment and comforted her. "Don't worry, Granny Long. First, circulate your energy and restore your magic power as soon as possible. Then, try again." Granny Long nodded and said, "That's the only way." After saying that, she sat cross-legged on the ground and circulated her energy to refine the medicinal efficacy and quickly restore her magic power. Ji Tianxing also walked to the corner of the hall and sat cross-legged. Seeing this scene, Yun Yarrow quickly ran over and asked in confusion, "Tianxing, what are you doing?" Chapter 1729. Hearing Ji Tianxing's words, Yun Yarrow was immediately stunned. She quickly came back to her senses and revealed an incredulous expression. "Tianxing, that's a saint-level array formation. How can you find the source of the problem?" Ji Tianxing waved his hand and explained via voice transmission, I vaguely remember that I've seen related records before. Perhaps I can find some clues. I'm going to meditate for a while. Help me, God. Although this matter was hard to believe, Yun Yarrow knew very well that Ji Tianxing was not an ordinary person. He had been constantly creating miracles. Therefore, she chose to believe in Ji Tianxing. Okay, don't worry. I won't let anyone disturb you. After receiving Yun Yarrow's reply, Ji Tianxing was relieved and meditated. He controlled his essence soul to enter Kenshin's tomb. Swoosh! The essence soul golden sword turned into a small golden man and appeared in the dark and cold Kenshin's tomb. The small golden man looked exactly like Ji Tianxing and sped across the grey wasteland. After a while, he arrived in front of the 18 black tombstones. He stretched out his palm and pressed on the first tombstone on the right. Suddenly, the tombstone lit up with a hazy golden light and enveloped him. Swoosh! With a flash of golden light, he entered an alternate space and appeared in the sea of clouds. He crossed the stone bridge in the sea of clouds and arrived at the door of the sacred pagoda. After pushing open the door, he entered the Heavenly Sutra Pavilion and began to quickly flip through the books and documents. There were tens of thousands of books in the Heavenly Sutra Pavilion, and everything about martial arts was covered. When Ji Tianxing was flipping through ancient books in the past, he had seen records of the Nether Passage soul sealing array in some books. This kind of array formation was a saint-level array formation that had been passed down for thousands of years. When Ji Tianxing saw the relevant records in the past, he did not take it to heart. After all, his strength was low. Even if he read it, it was useless. It was impossible for him to set up a saint-level array formation. After a long time, he could not remember the contents clearly. Now that he had come to the Heavenly Sutra Pavilion again, his goal was very clear. He wanted to find information about the Nether Passage soul sealing array. In just an hour, he had scanned more than 3,000 books with his divine sense and finally found 2 relevant books. With a wave of his hand, he took the 2 ancient books from the bookshelf and carefully read them. The 2 thick ancient books had hundreds of pages and nearly 100,000 words. They recorded a lot of information related to array formations. Ji Tianxing spent an hour to find the information he wanted and memorize it. After closing the ancient books, he waved his hands and placed the 2 ancient books back on the bookshelf. Then, he walked out of the Heavenly Sutra Pavilion and left the Kenshin tomb. In the next instant, his primordial spirit returned to its original position, and he opened his eyes. The hall was quiet, and the light was dim. Granny Long was still sitting in the middle of the hall, meditating beside the light shield. Seeing that he had woken up, Yun Yarrow hurriedly asked via voice transmission, Tianxing, how is it? Have you found any clues? Ji Tianxing stood up and nodded to her. I've found it. I know what's going on. What's the reason? Yun Yarrow showed a look of expectation. Ji Tianxing pointed to the grayish-white light shield in the middle of the hall and explained, Granny Long is right. The Nether Passage soul sealing array and the important relics of the deceased can indeed summon the souls of the dead. Granny Long's plan is correct, and there's nothing wrong with the array formation she arranged. But this array is not complete enough. She needs to add a few seals to add the effect of summoning souls to the array formation. Moreover, there are some problems with the method Granny Long used to activate the array and summon the souls of the dead. Ji Tianxing pointed out the root of the problem and briefly explained it to Yun Yarrow. After hearing it, Yun Yarrow was shocked and felt that it was inconceivable. The Nether Passage soul sealing array is a very rare and rarely used saint-level array formation. How can you know so much about it? You can even point out the flaws and problems of Granny Long? Tianxing, if this matter is spread out, the entire Luotian mountain will be in an uproar. Ji Tianxing smiled and waved his hand. It doesn't matter whether it's sensational or not. Let's get down to business first. What business? Yun Yarrow raised her eyebrows in confusion. After thinking for a while, she suddenly thought of something. Tianxing, don't tell me, you want to add seals to Granny Long's array? Ji Tianxing smiled and nodded, that's right. Yun Yarrow was even more shocked and she asked worriedly, but that's a saint-level array formation. Can you really add seals? What if you get hurt by the power of the array formation? Before she could finish, Ji Tianxing said confidently, "Don't worry. I'm just borrowing the power of the array formation to add seals. I don't need to be a martial sage. Moreover, as long as you understand the array well enough, you won't get hurt by the backlash." After he finished speaking, he turned around and walked to the middle of the hall. He walked a few rounds around the grayish-white light shield and used his Dharma eye to observe it for a few minutes before he started to cast his spell. He formed a spell with both hands and shot out white light. The white light formed many arcs and formed all sorts of ancient words before he injected them into the light shield. The light shield did not block or reflect the white light. It just quietly shone with white light. Ji Tianxing's spell, the spell, and the runes merged perfectly with the light shield. Yun Yarrow was originally worried about Sumo. However, when she saw this, she immediately dispelled her worries. Unknowingly, an hour had passed. Ji Tianxing finished casting his spell and successfully added 6 seals to the array formation. After he finished casting his spell, the 6 seals merged with the array formation. The grayish-white light shield immediately became bright and dazzling. It exuded a more holy and powerful aura. Yun Yarrow could clearly feel that the power and aura of the Underworld Passage Soul Sealing Array had undergone a qualitative change. If the array that Granny Long had set up previously was just an inanimate object, then the array formation that Granny Long had set up was just an empty shell. Now, after Ji Tianxing's modification, the array formation had become like a living creature. It was extremely agile and powerful. "This is unbelievable. Tianxing, you actually completed the saint-level array formation set up by Granny Long. This is definitely a miracle." Yun Yarrow stared at Ji Tianxing with sparkling eyes. She could not help but exclaim. Her eyes were filled with surprise and pride. Granny Long, who was meditating, was also awakened by the aura of the array formation. She quickly stopped casting her spell and opened her eyes to look at the array formation. When she saw that the light shield of the array formation had turned white and lit up with holy white light, her expression changed immediately. She could feel that the aura of the array formation was several times stronger than before. Her eyes widened, and her old face was filled with shock. What's going on? Who touched this array formation? Granny Long turned to look at Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow and asked in a serious tone. "Granny, it's like this." Yun Yarrow quickly explained to her what had happened. After Granny Long heard everything, she was even more shocked. She stared at Ji Tianxing. Her lips trembled a few times before she exclaimed in surprise, "Good. This is really good. I really did not expect that you, Tianxing, would have such incredible knowledge and skills to help me complete this saint-level array formation. You are only at the primordial soul stage, but you can complete this saint-level array formation. If I did not see it with my own eyes, who would dare to believe it?" Chapter 1730. Back then on the ancient viewing platform in the Divine Ruins, Granny Long had seen how outstanding Ji Tianxing was. But at that time, she only saw Ji Tianxing's strength and vast knowledge. How monstrous was Ji Tianxing? She didn't know in her heart and didn't have a specific idea. But after this incident, she felt it even more deeply. The Nether Passage Soul Sealing formation that she personally set up was a very rare and complicated saint-level array formation. Even she herself didn't know much about this array formation. Her understanding was not thorough enough. Ji Tianxing, on the other hand, was able to add seals to the grand formation and perfect it to a near-perfect state. How could she not be horrified? Deep surprise and shock filled Granny Long's heart, making her unable to calm down for a long time. With Ji Tianxing alone, he can surpass all the young geniuses in the world. Luotian Mountain has really picked up a treasure. Granny Long's heart surged as she secretly sighed with emotion. After a long time, her emotions stabilized. She looked at Ji Tianxing with a burning gaze and said, "Tianxing, since you can perfect this array formation, it means that you know it like the back of your hand. This old one's magic power has recovered by more than half, and I'm ready to try again. Can you cooperate with this old one to activate the array formation?" Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "I'm happy to help." "Good. There's no time to lose, let's start now." Granny Long revealed a kind smile and began to cast the spell. With her as the lead, She released a vast amount of magic power and poured it into the nether passage soul sealing formation. As the array formation was activated, the light shield lit up with an even more dazzling white light, illuminating the entire hall. Ji Tianxing only had the strength of the essence spirit realm and was not enough to activate the saint-level array formation. He could only protect Granny Long and watch the changes of the nether passage soul sealing formation. Once there was any problem or deviation in the array, he would adjust it. Soon, 15 minutes passed. The nether passage soul sealing formation was operating normally. The invisible power it released had already spread between heaven and earth and was spreading crazily. Granny Long could clearly feel that after Ji Tianxing perfected the array, its power had increased several times and it was easier to control. The amount of magic power she needed to control the array had been reduced by 70%. It could be said that it was a piece of cake. A short hour later, a wisp of grey aura condensed in the blazing white light shield. This grey soul aura was obviously much stronger and darker in color. The light grey soul spirit inside the light shield immediately fused with it and became even stronger. Not long after, a third grey soul aura appeared in the light shield. Then, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth. As time passed, wisps of soul energy were condensed in the blazing white light shield. Granny Long, Ji Tianxing, and Yun Yarrow were all in high spirits as they saw the hope of success. Unknowingly, another 12 hours had passed. According to the previous situation, Granny Long's magic power would be exhausted, and she would not be able to continue. But now, she only had 40% of her magic power left. She could only hold on for a few more hours. More than 20 wisps of soul energy had been condensed in the blazing white light shield. Many wisps of soul energy gathered together and condensed into a washbasin-sized grey fog that was constantly surging and churning. The grey fog had been trying to condense into a human form, but it could not do so. Granny Long knew very well that the soul energy summoned by the array was not enough to condense Yu Wei's remnant soul. She continued to operate the array to summon the remnant soul energy that was drifting between heaven and earth. Ji Tianxing also adjusted a few seals to stimulate the array's potential and make the array's power stronger. In the next 6 hours, 10 wisps of soul energy appeared in the blazing white light shield one after another. A full 18 hours passed. Granny Long's magic power was exhausted again and she could no longer operate the array. She was forced to stop. The dazzling white light of the blazing white light shield also gradually dimmed, returning to normal and calm. At this time, the number of soul energy gathered in the light shield had reached 36 wisps. All the soul energy gathered together to form a large grey fog that was surging and twisting. Granny Long did not have time to rest. She stared at the grey fog with shining eyes, waiting for the result. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow also stared at the grey fog without blinking. They prayed silently in their hearts that it would succeed. About 15 minutes later, after countless times of merging, twisting, and pulling, the grey mist finally condensed into a vague figure about 7 feet tall. The grey figure was somewhat hazy and its face could not be seen clearly. However, its body was slender, and it was obviously a woman with a strong and healthy body. Granny Long was pleasantly surprised. She exclaimed in a low voice, "It's finally done. This is great." Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow also heaved a sigh of relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. Without needing Granny Long to explain, the two of them knew that the hazy grey figure in the light shield was Yu Wei's remnant soul. The remnant soul did not have any self-awareness. It just floated quietly in the air like a ghost. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow were looking forward to seeing how Granny Long would use the remnant soul to find the Bloodskull's location. Unfortunately, Granny Long's dharmic power was exhausted. She had to recuperate. The two of them could only wait patiently. After a whole night, Granny Long finally finished recuperating. Her dharmic power had recovered by about 80%. She took out an ancient bronze compass from her infinite space ring and placed it in front of her. When she injected her dharmic power into the compass, the ancient compass suddenly emitted a golden light. It became as big as a millstone and floated in the air. The whole hall was illuminated by the golden light. Granny Long stretched out her hand and grabbed the blood-red crystal in the light shield, as well as the grey remnant soul, and put them into the compass. Swoosh! The dazzling golden light engulfed the grey remnant soul and the blood-red crystal, and it began to spin rapidly. Hundreds of ancient seal characters and symbols appeared on top of the compass, dancing in a special trajectory. Granny Long stood in the hall with a solemn expression. She made a series of hand seals with both hands, using her majestic dharmic power to form various seals. After an entire hour, the ancient bronze compass finally stopped spinning, and the surging golden light also stopped. The hundreds of seal characters and symbols also stopped moving. They arranged themselves into special patterns and patterns. Granny Long stared at the patterns. After a moment of careful observation, she came to a conclusion. It's there. Those damned ghosts have already escaped from the Black Frost Empire and are trying to bring it back to the North Underworld Mountain, Granny Long muttered to herself. A cold light flashed in her eyes. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow looked at her in confusion. Granny Long, have you found the Blood Skull's location? It was taken away by the 10,000 skeletal demon. Where are they hiding now? They are in the Sky Wolf mountain range at the northern border of the Theocracy. If we go further north, we will leave the Theocracy and enter the North Underworld mountain range. As she spoke, Granny Long waved her hands and put away the ancient bronze compass. Chapter 1731. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow both frowned and looked serious. Grandma Long, should we chase after them now? The Sky Wolf mountain range is very close to the North Underworld mountain. Even if we rush there at full speed, I'm afraid we won't make it. Both of them were worried about this and were thinking about how to solve this problem. Grandma Long waved her hand and said earnestly, "You two don't have to participate in this matter. Just stay in the Luotian mountain and cultivate." Ghost experts often appear at the northern border of the Divine Nation recently. It's very dangerous. I won't let you take the risk again. By the time you reach the Sky Wolf mountain range, the Blood Skulls would have been brought back to the North Underworld mountain. That 10,000 skeleton demon is a Tribulation Realm expert. You won't be able to help even if you go. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow were silent and didn't refute Grandma Long's words. After all, what she said was the truth. Ji Tianxing asked, "Grandma Long, what's your plan?" Grandma Long said seriously, "I already have a plan. I'll send a few divine envoys to solve this problem. They will take the Heaven Fate ship and rush to the Sky Wolf mountain range. They should be able to rescue the Blood Skulls before the ghost race returns to the North Underworld mountain." Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow nodded and agreed with her plan. After that, Granny Long gave a few words of advice to the two of them before she turned around and left the hall to assign tasks. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow stopped for a moment before leaving the underground palace. They returned to the Cloud Water Palace and entered their own secret rooms to cultivate while waiting patiently for Grandma Long's news. When the Blood Skulls were rescued and brought back to the Luotian mountain, Ji Tianxing still had to purify the demonic aura. For the next few days, the Luotian mountain was peaceful. Ji Tianxing had been cultivating diligently in the secret room to strengthen his martial Dao foundation and steadily increase his strength. At the same time, he was also cultivating his sword intent and working hard to make it more prominent and powerful. After 9 days and 9 nights of cultivation, his strength had increased again and was about to reach the peak of the 9th level of the Essence Soul Realm. He had a strong premonition that he would be able to break through to the Tribulation Realm in 2 to 3 months. At the same time, Yun Yarrow was also cultivating diligently in the secret room, trying her best to break through to the Tribulation stage. Even though she had already refined the Longevity Divine Pearl and her strength had increased by 1 level, she was still a celestial immortal. However, the power and effects of the Longevity Divine Pearl were far beyond that. Boundless divine power of immortality was hidden in her body and soul, subtly transforming her and making her stronger with each passing day. She could even conclude that the power of a Longevity Divine Pearl could at least allow her to grow to the 6th or 7th level of the Tribulation Realm before her power weakened. After 9 days and 9 nights of seclusion, her strength had more than tripled, allowing her to successfully reach the peak of the 9th firmament Essence Soul Realm. Right now, she was already at the perfected Primordial Spirit Realm. If he took another step forward, he would be able to break through to the Crossing Calamity Realm and step into an even more powerful realm. However, in order to break through to the Tribulation Passing Realm, She had to trigger the heavenly tribulation and successfully pass it once. She hadn't sensed when the heavenly tribulation would come. This meant that her cultivation realm and timing weren't there yet. She still had to wait for a few more days. Half a year ago, she had read up on all the information regarding the crossing calamity realm and was very familiar with it. A martial artist's strength surpassed the primordial spirit realm. After successfully passing the heavenly tribulation, he would reach the first level of the crossing calamity realm. After reaching the first level of the crossing calamity realm, if the martial artist's growth was fast enough, he would trigger the second heavenly tribulation in 200 to 300 years. If the martial artist's growth was very slow, his strength might even stagnate. After 1,000 years, the second heavenly tribulation would definitely come. After successfully passing the second heavenly tribulation, one would successfully reach the second level of the crossing calamity realm and become even stronger. Those who failed to pass the heavenly tribulation would definitely turn into ashes and perish completely. From the first level of the crossing calamity realm to the 9th level of the crossing calamity realm, a martial artist had to go through 9 heavenly tribulations and go through 9 trials to become a martial sage. The power of the 9 heavenly tribulations would be stronger each time. The 8th and 9th heavenly tribulations were extremely terrifying and could be said to be destructive. Since ancient times, there had been countless martial artists who could reach the crossing calamity realm. However, there were very few martial artists who could successfully pass the 9th heavenly tribulation and break through to the martial sage realm. The ancients said that under the heavenly tribulation, less than 1 in 10 martial artists would survive. This meant that more than 90% of the crossing calamity realm martial artists would perish under the heavenly tribulation. Less than 1 in 10 martial artists could successfully pass the heavenly tribulation. Yoon Yarrow understood this information, so she was a little nervous and hesitant. She hoped that the heavenly tribulation would come as soon as possible so that she could break through to the crossing calamity realm. However, she was worried that the heavenly tribulation would come too early and she would not be prepared enough. When the time came, she would be in danger of perishing. On the morning of the 10th day, there was no morning sun in the sky and it was a little gloomy. Ji Tianxing and Yoon Yarrow ended their seclusion and walked out of the secret room. The two of them returned to the room and asked each other about the situation. After knowing that each other's strength had increased, they were both gratified for each other. Ji Tianxing knew that Yoon Yarrow had reached the peak of the primordial soul realm and said with a smile, Yarrow, I didn't expect you to reach the peak of the primordial soul realm before me. It seems that you might pass the heavenly tribulation before me. The power of the longevity divine pearl is indeed extraordinary. According to my estimation, it can help you reach the 7th or 8th tier of the crossing calamity realm in just a few years. Yoon Yarrow held his hand and said calmly, the longevity divine pearl is a divine item. Its power is naturally extraordinary. It's good that I pass the heavenly tribulation first. At least I can learn from it. When you pass the heavenly tribulation, you will know how to deal with it. However, the heavenly tribulation is very powerful. Less than 1 in 10 will survive. I don't know how many heavenly tribulations I can pass. Ji Tianxing smiled and comforted her, don't worry. You are a rare top genius in the world and you have inherited the divine Tao inheritance of Goddess Yaoguang. If even you can't pass the heavenly tribulation, can a martial sage be born on the Shunwu continent? Anyway, I am very confident in you. You will be fine. I hope so. Yoon Yarrow nodded and continued, by the way, today is the 10th day. I wonder if the divine envoys have completed their mission. Let's go find Granny Long and ask about the situation. Ji Tianxing nodded and said, okay. Afterward, the two of them left the Cloud Water Palace and went to find Granny Long. The two of them arrived at Granny Long's residence and saw her in the study. They went straight to the point and asked about the situation. Granny Long put down the things in her hands and said to the two of them with a gratified expression, you came at the right time. I just received a message from Divine Envoy Du last night. They will be back soon. A few days ago, they rushed to the Celestial Wolf mountain range and found the Blood Skull and the 10,000 skeletal demon at the border of the Divine Nation and the North Underworld Mountain. The three divine envoys worked together and used all their means to kill the 10,000 skeletal demon and rescue the blood skull. They have already brought the blood skull back. Calculating the time, they will arrive at the Luotian mountain at noon today. Tianxing, can't you get rid of the demonic aura for the blood skull? Chapter 1732. 100,000 miles away from the Luotian mountain, there was a vast plain. The plain was rich in resources, and the scenery was pleasant. It was the most suitable place for humans to live and cultivate. In the middle of the plain, there was an ancient city that had lasted for 1,000 years. It was called Lanfeng City. There were millions of humans living in the city. The city was very prosperous and lively. In addition, there were dozens of villages and towns scattered around the Lanfeng City. There were hundreds of thousands of people in total. For 1,000 years, the Lanfeng City and many villages and towns had good weather and were very peaceful. The people lived and worked in peace. At this moment, the sun was high in the sky. However, there was no sun in the sky. It was grey and covered with a layer of dark clouds. In the sky, thousands of feet above the ground, there was an icy blue stream of light that was speeding in the direction of the Luotian mountain. In the icy blue light, there was an exquisite and gorgeous flying boat that was 30 feet long. This was the flying treasure used by the Luotian mountain. It was called the Heaven Fate boat. Inside the flying boat, a middle-aged man in a purple robe was controlling the array and driving the flying boat. In the spacious and bright hall, there was an ice crystal coffin that was 15 feet long. It was flowing with colorful lights. In the ice crystal coffin, there was a blood-red skeleton lying quietly. This skeleton was more than 30 feet long and was well preserved. The skeleton was blood-red and emitted a turbulent devil aura. It lay motionless in the coffin. Its body was covered with a layer of colorful flowing light. It was obviously suppressed by the array. On the left and right sides of the ice crystal coffin, there were two middle-aged men sitting cross-legged on the ground. They were quietly resting with their eyes closed. These two middle-aged men were both at the 5th and 6th stage of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. They had a majestic aura. However, the two of them were covered with wounds. Some of the wounds were purple-black, and there was still devil aura left. There was no doubt that they had fought fiercely and suffered serious injuries. At this time, the Heaven Fate boat was about to reach the sky above the Lanfeng City. The man in a green robe on the left opened his eyes and glanced at the ice crystal coffin. He then asked, "Divine Envoy Liu, how are your injuries?" The man in a purple robe on the right side of the coffin also opened his eyes. He sighed angrily, "Alas, the other injuries are still okay. They are mostly healed. There are only a few wounds that still have powerful devil aura that can't be removed. Divine Envoy Du, how is your recovery?" Divine Envoy Du smiled bitterly and said, "I'm in the same situation as you. I can't get rid of the remaining demon chi. However, we've already reached Lanfeng City and will be able to return to Luotian Mountain very soon. When the time comes, we can ask Granny Long for help. She might have a way." Divine Emissary Willow suddenly thought of something and hastily said, "By the way, Ji Tianxing said before that he can get rid of the Bloodskull's demon chi. Why don't we ask him for help? I'm sure he has a way." Divine Envoy Du was startled for a moment and said with some embarrassment, "We are all divine envoys. As seniors, isn't it a bit embarrassing to ask a junior for help?" Divine Emissary Willow waved his hand and said, "What is there to be embarrassed about?" Although Ji Tianxing was a god's disciple, he was highly regarded by Granny Long and the Lord God. In my opinion, he will be able to reach the tribulation transcending realm within 1 or 2 years at most. In 100 years, his strength may very well catch up to ours. Divine Envoy Du's face was full of astonishment and he said in disbelief, "Divine Emissary Willow, although I admit that Ji Tianxing is very monstrous and is the #1 genius of the 3 kingdoms, your opinion of him is too high. But aren't you exaggerating a bit by giving him such a high evaluation?" "No, no, no." Divine Emissary Willow hastily shook his head and explained with a smile, "This is not an exaggeration at all. Listen to my analysis." The two divine envoys were discussing Ji Tianxing's matter with a very focused look on their faces. However, neither of them noticed that the blood skull lying in the crystal coffin had suddenly changed. Wisps of mysterious black chi gushed out from its body and quietly corroded the layer of golden light barrier. Noiselessly, the golden light barrier was corroded by the black chi and gradually collapsed. The seal of the array was lifted and the blood skull regained its ability to move. However, it was still lying in the crystal coffin without moving an inch, but a dense blood-red light gushed out from its body. The dark red light and the black chi fused together and turned into a black-robed figure in the blink of an eye. This black-robed figure was more than 10 feet tall and had an extremely tall and sturdy body. His body was covered by the black robe and his head was also covered by a large cloak, making it impossible to see his face. Under the pitch-black cloak, only a pair of dark purple eyes could be seen. They shone with a frightening and ferocious light. Suddenly, the black-robed figure raised both of his palms and attacked the crystal coffin lid with all his might. With a loud bang, the lid of the ice crystal coffin was blown away. The huge coffin lid fiercely hit the ceiling of the main hall and exploded into countless pieces, splashing in all directions. The sudden impact created a crater in the ceiling of the main hall. The entire Heaven Fate ship shook violently and flipped in the sky. Divine Emissary Dew and Divine Emissary Willow were instantly alerted. They immediately stabilized their bodies and rushed towards the crystal coffin with their swords. Not good. It's going to escape. Stop it. The two of them held their swords and rushed towards the crystal coffin from the left and right. Before the two of them could see the situation inside the coffin, a tall black figure flew out from the coffin. Bam! Bam! Two pitch-black palm shadows came towards them and sent Divine Emissary Dew and Divine Emissary Willow flying. The two of them spat out blood and flew backward, crashing into the wall fiercely. Boom! Crack! The wall shattered, and two large holes appeared on the side of the Heaven Fate ship. The two divine emissaries flew out of the Heaven Fate ship and into the sky. Immediately after, the tall black figure also broke through the crater in the ceiling of the main hall and pierced through the Heaven Fate ship. Swish! He flew out of the Heaven Fate ship and into the sky. He waved his sleeves and attacked the two divine emissaries. The Heaven Fate ship had 3 large holes and was on the verge of losing control. The divine emissary controlling the Heaven Fate ship decisively controlled the array and kept the Heaven Fate ship. Swish! With a flash of light, the huge Heaven Fate ship shrunk thousands of times and became a palm-sized boat. The purple-robed divine emissary appeared in the sky and kept the boat in his interspatial ring. He turned his head and looked forward and immediately saw the situation in the sky. In the sky thousands of feet above the ground, Divine Emissary Dew and Divine Emissary Willow were waving their swords and using their secret techniques to fight with the black-robed man. On the grassland under everyone's feet, there was a prosperous city with a radius of 100 miles. It was Lanfeng City. Seeing this scene, the purple-robed divine emissary's face changed and revealed a look of deep worry. He also quickly took out a treasure saber and attacked the black-robed man without any regard for his own safety. The two sides fought fiercely in the sky. Although the 3 divine emissaries had the advantage in numbers, they did their best to besiege the black-robed man. However, the black-robed man's strength was too strong and had reached the 9th stage of the tribulation passing realm. He easily withstood the attacks of the 3 divine envoys and only used a dozen moves to injure the 3 divine envoys. Chapter 1733. Bam! 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 Black light blades and palm shadows that blotted out the sky hit the 3 divine envoys one after another, causing a loud explosion. The 3 divine envoys were sent flying, their bodies splattered with blood as they let out painful cries. However, the 3 of them had strong willpower. They ignored their injuries and waved their swords at the black-robed man. During this time, the purple-robed divine envoy took the time to send a message to the Luotian mountain for help. Previously at the northern border, the 3 of them had already suffered heavy injuries when they killed the 10,000 skeletons and rescued the blood skull. Now that they had not recovered from their injuries and only retained 60% to 70% of their combat strength, how could they be a match for the black-robed man? In a short 100 breaths of time, the two sides had exchanged over 100 moves. The 3 gods' envoys were covered in wounds, and blood was dripping from their wounds. The purple-robed divine envoy's injuries were the most serious. His entire right arm had been cut off and there was a bowl-sized bloody hole in his chest. His internal organs were clearly visible. Divine Envoy Du and Divine Envoy Liu were also very miserable. There were at least 30 wounds on their bodies. Even the top of their heads and faces had several bone-deep wounds. The three of them were rapidly weakening. Let alone defeating the black-robed man, they could not even tie him down. As for the mysterious black-robed man, he was still unscathed and his strength was still unparalleled. The two sides temporarily stopped fighting and faced each other high in the sky. The three divine envoys spread out and pointed their swords at the black-robed man. They stared at him with hatred. "Damned demon, who are you? Why are you hiding in the ice crystal coffin?" Divine Envoy Du asked angrily. The black-robed man stood quietly in the sky. His entire body was shrouded in a hazy black fog, which made him seem even more mysterious and powerful. Under the black cloak, the pair of dark purple eyes flashed with a mocking sneer. He. There's no harm in telling you. I am Xiao Ming, one of the 36 demon monarchs, ranked 5th. I hid in the ice crystal coffin to give you a surprise and give you a piece of advice. The black-robed Xiao Ming's voice was very dry and hoarse, like two pieces of dead wood rubbing against each other. It was extremely uncomfortable to hear. The three divine envoys immediately frowned, their faces became very gloomy. 36 demon monarchs. Ranked 5th. Divine Envoy Du suddenly thought of something and asked in a deep voice, "You are called Xiao Ming? What is your relationship with Xiao Yi?" "That's Benjuan's elder brother." Xiao Ming replied coldly. "I see. Willow God Emissary cursed with a heart full of hatred, you two brothers are devils who deserve to die. You deserve to be hacked into pieces." Xiao Ming immediately sneered, "Ha ha ha ha. Cut him into pieces? What a great idea. This monarch has decided to fulfill your wish and let you taste the feeling of being cut into pieces." The purple-robed messenger was the leader of the three. He did not waste time with Xiao Ming. He asked in a deep voice, "What do you mean by the advice you just gave?" Xiao Ming looked at him coldly and said, "My race has been dormant in the North Underworld Mountain for thousands of years. We are not afraid of the Luo River Divine Kingdom. We just want to preserve our strength. But now, times have changed. The pain and calamity that the Luo Shui Divine Nation inflicted on our race will be returned tenfold. Go back and tell your master to stop provoking my race. Otherwise, the Luo Shui Divine Nation will not be able to bear the revenge of the North Underworld Mountain." Xiao Ming's tone was filled with an iron-blooded domineering aura and thick killing intent. The three divine envoys' faces were filled with anger, and their eyes were filled with rage as they opened their mouths to curse. "Bastard! How audacious! You don't know life from death. How dare you threaten the Luo Shui Divine Nation with just the power of the North Underworld Mountain? A mere ghost race dares to be so arrogant. Our Luo Shui Divine Lord is merciful and did not kill all of you. That's why the ghost race is struggling at death's door. Since the ghost race doesn't know life from death, just wait to be razed to the ground by the Divine Nation's army." Xiao Ming did not bother to refute and did not waste time with the three messengers. This monarch has delivered the message. You can all die now. As he spoke, Xiao Ming raised his palms and released a bloody light that covered the sky and earth, spreading in all directions. Demonic blood purgatory. In the blink of an eye, endless bloody light enveloped a radius of 100 miles, turning the world into a sea of blood. This area was sealed, completely turning into a blood-colored world. In the sea of blood, huge waves surged to the sky. White bones floated up and down. It was as terrifying as purgatory on earth. The three messengers were drowned by the sea of blood and were suppressed by a powerful force. They struggled desperately in the sea of blood, unable to break free. The prosperous blue-rich city was also mostly submerged by the sea of blood. The towering ancient city walls collapsed and disintegrated in the sea of blood, turning into countless bricks and dregs. Rows upon rows of buildings, tall buildings, and palaces rapidly melted in the sea of blood, turning into mud and dust. Hundreds of thousands of common people were also corroded by the sea of blood. Their bodies rapidly corroded and festered, turning into white bones. Even though the common people of Blue Rich City were all martial artists, the majority had strength above the origin core realm. However, Martial artists below the Tribulation Transcendence realm were unable to resist the corrosion of the blood purgatory. Even Essence Soul realm geniuses and powerhouses could only struggle for a moment before their lives were taken, turning into white skeletons. In the entire Blue Rich City, there were only 2 Tribulation Transcendence realm powerhouses. They were precisely the City Lord and a certain large family's ancestor. But these 2 powerhouses only had strength at the 2nd and 3rd level Tribulation Transcendence realm. They bitterly persisted in the sea of blood for 7 to 8 minutes before their physical bodies were destroyed. Their primordial spirits were killed by Xiao Ming very quickly. In a short 7 to 8 minutes, more than half of Blue Rich City was destroyed, turning into a pile of ruins. All of the city walls and buildings turned into rubble and dregs, sinking into the sea of blood. More than 700,000 martial artists and common people were all annihilated, turning into white skeletons that piled up like a mountain. The flesh, blood, essence, and souls of these common people were all devoured by Xiao Ming, greatly increasing his magic power. In the blood purgatory, blood waves surged to the sky. Dense white bones floated, terrifying to the extreme. 2 of the 3 messengers were also killed. Divine Emissary Willow was killed by Xiao Ming. Before he died, he was even hacked into pieces, his physical body twisted into dregs by the Devil Blade. Even his essence soul was also destroyed and devoured by Xiao Ming using a secret art. Divine Emissary Du also died. He was killed by Xiao Ming using a Devil Path secret art, body and soul annihilated. Only the purple-robed Divine Emissary survived. It was not that he was powerful, but that Xiao Ming spared his life and did not kill him. But he also suffered extremely cruel torture. His hands and feet were chopped off, and his essence soul was severely injured. He was already on the verge of death. Xiao Ming stood above the sea of blood and looked down at him from above. He said in a cold tone, "This Lord spared your lowly life and let you go back to pass on the message." This massacre was a warning from North Underworld Mountain. If the Luoshui Divine Kingdom dared to invade North Underworld Mountain again, the next time, the ones to be slaughtered would not be just 700,000 people. Chapter 1734. On Luotian Mountain, Grandma Long, Ji Tianxing, and Yun Yarrow were waiting patiently. It was already close to noon, but the 3 divine envoys had yet to return. The sky outside the main hall was overcast, and a layer of haze shrouded their hearts. They had a bad premonition. After keeping silent for a long time, Yun Yarrow couldn't help but ask, "Grandma Long, according to the time, the 3 divine envoys should have returned, right? Why are they still nowhere to be seen? Could they have been delayed by something on the way?" Grandma Long had the same thoughts and worries, but she kept her composure and nodded slightly. "Perhaps. Let's wait a little longer." The main hall quietened down again. Unknowingly, 15 minutes had passed. Suddenly, a stream of light flew from the sky and penetrated the grey clouds into the main hall. Swish! The stream of light flashed and flew to the front of Grandma Long. Grandma Long felt something and reached out to grab the spirit light in her palm. The light dispersed, and a message jade slip appeared in her palm. She frowned and used her divine senses to check the message in the jade slip. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow were also awakened. They turned to look at her with a puzzled expression. When Grandma Long finished reading the contents of the jade slip, she instantly frowned, and her expression became serious and cold. "Not good. Something happened." Grandma Long yelled and kept the jade slip. She stood up and flew out of the main hall. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow hurriedly followed. As they flew out, they asked, "Granny Long, what happened?" On the way back, the 3 divine envoys were attacked by the ghost race experts near Lanfeng City. As she spoke, Grandma Long came out of the main hall, took out a Heaven Fate ship, and brought them into the flying ship. She steered the flying ship and rushed to Lanfeng City as fast as a stream of light. In her anxiety, she used all her strength and pushed the speed of the Heaven Fate ship to the limit. It only took her 2 hours to cover the distance of 100,000 kilometers. The prowess of a martial saint expert was undoubtedly displayed. Swish! An icy blue stream of light pierced through the sky like a thunderbolt. 2 hours later, the Heaven Fate ship finally arrived above Lanfeng City. After Granny Long put away the flying boat, she, Ji Tianxing, and Yun Yarrow appeared in the sky at the same time. The three of them stood high up in the sky and looked down at the scene below. Below them was a boundless plain with lush green grass. Dozens of miles away was an ancient and majestic city. However, the city that was supposed to be flourishing and prosperous had now been reduced to ruins. 80% of the cities within a radius of 100 miles had been turned into ruins. The ancient and majestic city walls, rows upon rows of buildings, and those majestic palaces were all reduced to rubble. The ground was covered with broken bricks and all kinds of messy debris. In some of the ruins piled up like mountains, some skeletons could be seen occasionally. The ground was dark red and emitted a thick smell of blood. Thick demonic chi and the pungent smell of blood still lingered in the sky within 100 miles. The sky above Lanfeng City was covered by a thick layer of blood-red clouds. Even when the wind blew, it did not disperse. What a tragic scene. In the entire Lanfeng City, only a corner, about 20% of the area was still intact. The city walls and buildings in that area were all intact. The hundreds of thousands of martial artists and commoners living in it also survived by luck. But everyone was scared silly. Terrified to the extreme, they abandoned the city and fled, scattering on the vast plain. For 1,000 years, Lanfeng City had been peaceful. Such a terrifying disaster had never happened. To those martial artists and commoners, this was a disaster they had never experienced before. Granny Long, Ji Tianxing, and Yun Yarrow were stunned on the spot after seeing the scene of Lanfeng City clearly. Their faces became incomparably ugly. Damn it! We were still a step too late. Granny Long's face was livid with anger. Her eyes surged with killing intent. Ji Tianxing also revealed a murderous look. He yelled in a cold tone, such a huge city, nearly 1 million commoners were actually destroyed. Yun Yarrow was angry and puzzled. She could not help but ask, what happened here? How many powerhouses did the demon clan dispatch to cause such a tragic scene? While talking, the three of them released their divine senses to explore the ruins of Lanfeng City, hoping to find clues. Granny Long's divine sense covered a radius of 200 miles, searching for the traces of the three divine envoys. Lanfeng City was destroyed and hundreds of thousands of commoners were missing. This made her furious. But she knew that only by finding the three divine envoys as soon as possible could she know what happened. After about 100 breaths of time, her divine sense suddenly detected a familiar aura on the grassland 100 miles away from the ruins of Lanfeng City. It was a low mound covered by a lush forest. The familiar aura came from the forest. It was a little weak and flashed away. Granny Long teleported without hesitation. Swish! Her figure flickered a few times, and she came to the mound and entered the dense forest. Her divine sense spread out like mercury and enveloped the entire mound. Soon, she discovered that a purple-robed man covered in blood and wounds was hiding 300 meters below the ground. The purple-robed man was one of the divine envoys of Luotian Mountain. Surnamed Mo. Granny Long hurriedly used a secret technique and waved her palm to send a 5-colored stream of light into the depths of the ground. The 5-colored stream of light turned into a giant palm and wrapped divine envoy Mo, rescuing him from the ground. When Granny Long saw the condition of divine envoy Mo's injuries, she immediately sucked in a breath of cold air and felt a chill on her back. Divine envoy Mo was lying on the ground on the verge of death. His whole body was soaked in blood and mixed with the soil, making him look like a bloody clay figurine. His arms and legs had been chopped off, revealing the white bone stubble. His chest, back, and waist were densely covered with bloody holes, and his internal organs were flowing out. Even his cheeks and head were beyond recognition. He no longer looked like a human. It was a miracle that Divine Envoy Mo's body was still alive. Divine Envoy Mo, what happened? Who injured you like this? Granny Long stared at Divine Envoy Mo with burning eyes and asked with gritted teeth. Divine Envoy Mo was lying on the ground, twitching silently. His consciousness was blurred. When he heard Granny Long's voice, he was stunned for a moment before replying in a hoarse voice, "It's the demon monarch. Xiao Ming." He lurked in. Blood skull. There was a bloody hole in his throat, and when he spoke, his voice was muffled. He had to make a great effort to speak every word. Granny Long roughly understood what he meant and quickly comforted him, I understand. You don't have to worry. I'll heal you first. Chapter 1735. Granny Long was treating Divine Emissary Mo's wounds when Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow rushed over. Both of them were shocked to see Divine Emissary Mo in such a miserable state. However, they had already seen the cruelty of the devil race, so they were not surprised. Granny Long, let me treat Divine Emissary Mo. Yun Yarrow took the initiative to use her greenwood divine power to treat Divine Emissary Mo's wounds. The dark green greenwood divine power shrouded Divine Emissary Mo and had an immediate effect. The bloodstains on Divine Emissary Mo's body quickly dissipated, and his wounds healed quickly. In just an hour, his wounds had mostly healed, and his life force had stabilized. In a hurry, this was all Yun Yarrow could do. Divine Emissary Mo's injuries were too serious, and he still needed more than 10 years to fully recover. Including his hands and feet, it would take at least 10 years to grow back. Seeing that Divine Emissary Mo's breath had stabilized, Granny Long asked, Divine Emissary Mo, tell us what happened. Divine Emissary Du and Divine Emissary Liu, where did they go? Divine Emissary Mo lay on the ground wearily and said in a low voice, we defeated the 10,000 skeleton demon at the border of the Divine Nation. After capturing the blood skeleton, we sealed it in the crystal coffin. The journey was safe and sound, but when we arrived near Lanfeng City, Demon Lord Xiaoming broke out of the coffin and almost destroyed the entire Heaven Fate ship. At that time, we realized that he had secretly possessed the blood skeleton when we were at the border of the Divine Nation. Xiaoming was too strong, and we were no match for him. We couldn't stop him. Divine Emissary Du and Divine Emissary Liu were killed by Xiaoming. Even half of Lanfeng City was destroyed by Xiaoming's blood purgatory sea. After listening to Divine Emissary Mo's words, Granny Long, Ji Tianxing, and Yun Yarrow frowned. Granny Long's face was ashen as she cursed, that bastard of the ghost race is so arrogant. He dared to hide in the crystal coffin and only attacked when we arrived at Lanfeng City. The ghost race deliberately destroyed Lanfeng City and massacred 700,000 people. This is a demonstration to us. Divine Emissary Mo's eyes were burning with rage as he said resentfully, that's right. Xiaoming killed 2 divine envoys and left me alive. He wanted me to pass on a message. He said that this was just a warning. If Scandinavia dared to invade Dark North Mountain again, the next time, it would not be just 700,000 people who would be slaughtered. Xiaoming also said that the entire divine nations would not be able to withstand the wrath of Dark North Mountain. Grandma Long, who was already filled with anger, became even more furious after hearing Xiaoming's warning. Her entire body surged with killing intent. Damn it! To think that the Ghost Clan would be so arrogant, they really don't know what's good for them. Ji Tianxing thought for a moment, and suddenly thought of something, and immediately reminded with a solemn expression, Grandma Long, since Xiaoming is so rampant, he must have something to rely on. This is no small matter. I'm afraid that the North Underworld Mountain has some kind of conspiracy. We need to think about it at length. If possible, I suggest that you report this matter to the Divine Master. Without waiting for him to finish, Grandma Long waved her hand with a firm expression and said in a resolute tone, there's nothing to discuss. The Ghost Clan is courting death, and Scandinavia will not let them off easily. A mere Dark North Mountain, a small ghost clan, dares to talk nonsense and be so arrogant. No matter what conspiracy Dark North Mountain has, Luoshui Scandinavia is not afraid. After saying that, Grandma Long pointed to the ruins of Lanfeng City in the distance and ordered Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow, Tianxing, Yun Yarrow, you go to Lanfeng City first and stabilize the people. I will take Divine Emissary Mo back to Luotian Mountain first. After settling him down, I will send someone to replace you. The most important thing now is to rebuild Lanfeng City and settle the people down, so as not to spread the news and cause panic among the people. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow cupped their hands and said yes. Then, Grandma Long left with Divine Emissary Mo and returned to Luotian Mountain as fast as lightning. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow also left the forest and flew back to Lanfeng City to calm the panicked people. The two of them stayed in Lanfeng City and used their great divine abilities to clean up the ruins of the city. Hundreds of thousands of panicked cultivators and people gradually calmed down under the two's comfort. A day later, the two divine emissaries of Luotian Mountain arrived with a large number of craftsmen and guards. The following reconstruction work was presided over and completed by the two divine emissaries. With the craftsmen of Luotian Mountain, they would be able to rebuild Lanfeng City in the shortest time possible. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow left and rushed back to Luotian Mountain. Luotian Mountain, in the study of Grandma Long's residence. It was late at night, and the light in the study was dim. It was pitch black outside the window. The atmosphere in the room was somewhat solemn. Grandma Long sat in front of the table with a grave expression. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow stood in front of her and asked her about the situation. Grandma Long, how is Divine Emissary Mo? Where are Yu Wei's bones? Grandma Long said expressionlessly, Divine Emissary Mo is fine now. He entered the forbidden area in the back of the mountain to recuperate. It will be at least 10 years before he comes out. As for Yu Wei's bones, Divine Emissary Mo has already given them to me before he went into seclusion. Ji Tianxing nodded and said, in that case, I can purify the blood skull at any time and bury Yu Wei's bones. Grandma Long waved her hand and said, don't worry about this matter. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Yun Yarrow glanced at her and asked, then why are you so worried, Grandma? Is it because of the demon race? Grandma Long slightly nodded and looked at her and Ji Tianxing with deep eyes. She said in a grave tone, Tianxing, Yun Yarrow, although I don't know where you came from or what you have experienced in the past, I can tell that you are from the demon race. You seem to know a lot about the ghost race in the North Underworld Mountain. You even know some secrets. The corners of Ji Tianxing's mouth curled into a cold smile, and he said in a playful tone, not only do the two of us know the ghost clan very well, we also hate them to the core, and we are absolutely irreconcilable with them. Grandma Long, if you have any doubts or concerns, you can tell us directly. If we can answer them, we will tell you the truth. Good. Grandma Long nodded and said with a solemn expression, Divine Emissary Mo means that demon monarch Xiao Ming is very cunning and very arrogant. He obviously came prepared. However, since ancient times, the ghost race has been hiding in the North Underworld Mountain for 10,000 years. They didn't dare to make an enemy out of the divine nations. In the past 10,000 years, the ghost race has been hiding in the North Underworld Mountain and almost didn't dare to show their faces. However, since 1,000 years ago, the ghost race changed their low profile and dared to leave the North Underworld Mountain to confront the divine nation's armies. In recent years, the ghost race has become more and more arrogant and their activities have become more frequent. They have frequently invaded the borders of the divine nations. Moreover, a large number of ghost race experts have sneaked into the divine nation's territories to cause trouble. Chapter 1736. Granny Long's meaning was obvious. On Shunwu continent, the three divine kingdoms had always reigned supreme. Aside from the three divine kingdoms, there were many other powers and races on the continent, and Dark North Mountain was just one of them. However, these races and powers were very weak, and they had to keep a low profile to survive. They did not dare to oppose the three divine kingdoms. For the past 10,000 years, the ghosts of Dark North Mountain had remained dormant. However, in the past 1,000 years, the ghosts had become more active, and they had become bolder and bolder. They even dared to challenge the Luoshui divine kingdom. In recent years, the ghost clan had become even more unscrupulous, and their actions had become even more arrogant. Large numbers of ghost powerhouses had invaded the borders and infiltrated the Luoshui divine kingdom, causing chaos everywhere. At this point, Xiao Ming had infiltrated the vicinity of Luoshui Mountain and destroyed half of Lanfeng City, massacring 700,000 people. This was a great provocation, and the Luoshui divine kingdom would not let it go. However, Granny Long could not understand where the ghosts had gotten their confidence from. Were they not afraid that the Luoshui martial god would personally lead an army to flatten Dark North Mountain? Ji Tianxing understood Granny Long's doubts, and he explained without hesitation, Granny Long, this is a very simple question. In ancient times, the demons massacred the world and incurred the wrath of all races. They were besieged by various powerhouses and gods. In the end, the demons were destroyed, and many powerhouses and demon gods fell. Many races withered away, and most of the gods fell or died in battle. After the ancient war, the races that were lucky enough to survive had to recuperate. The demons could only hide in a corner and did not dare to show their faces again, lest they be killed by the other races. Speaking up to this point, Ji Tianxing pointed to the north and sneered, "Those despicable and cunning devils have holed up in the North Underworld Mountain and changed their name to the Ghost Clan, hoping to deceive the world. After tens of thousands of years, they had become strong enough. However, they were still evil and greedy demons, and they could not restrain the bloodthirst and slaughter in their bones, which made them restless. They thought that the tens of thousands of years had erased their history, and that the various races had forgotten their sins. Thus, they began to test the waters, moving out of Dark North Mountain and expanding into the outside world. Most importantly, they did not have a leader in the past. They did not have a martial god to oversee them, nor did they have a spiritual leader. But now, with a common leader, they had become more unified and united. Thus, their ultimate goal must be to destroy the various divine kingdoms, slaughter everyone, and occupy the entire Shenwu continent." Ji Tianxing's tone was very firm, full of hatred and killing intent. Granny Long was stunned. She looked at him in disbelief, her eyes shining brightly. She had never thought that the origins of the Ghost Clan in Dark North Mountain would be so complicated. In her impression, the weak and feeble Ghost Clan actually had such great ambitions. After a long while, she came back to her senses and asked in disbelief, "Tianxing, how did you know about this?" Ji Tianxing explained, "Granny Long, although I can't tell you why, I can guarantee with my character that this is absolutely true. If you don't believe me, you can report everything I said to the Divine Master without missing a single word." Granny Long was stunned for a moment before she gently shook her head. "No, of course I believe you. As a matter of fact, I do have some understanding of these ancient histories and secrets. It's just that I don't understand it as well as you do, and I don't know the ins and outs of the matter clearly." "Right. You said that the Ghost Clan of Dark North Mountain, no, the Devil Clan has a common leader? What's going on here? Aren't the supreme leaders of Dark North Mountain the great devil sages?" Ji Tianxing shook his head and explained, "Those great devil sages can only be considered the strongest in Dark North Mountain. They are definitely not the leaders of the Devil Clan. In ancient times, the Devil Clan worshipped the primogenitor demon god as their leader. During the Great War of the Gods, the primogenitor demon god was annihilated by the gods of various races and fell on the battlefield. However, the primogenitor demon god left behind a trace of its soul, and after 30,000 years, it was reborn with the help of the Devil Clan's powerhouses. Now that the primogenitor demon god has returned to Dark North Mountain, the great devil sages, 36 devil monarchs, and countless other Devil Clan members worship it as their leader." Granny Long was stunned and said in disbelief, "The primogenitor demon god? The primogenitor of the Devil Clan? It fell in ancient times, and after 30,000 years, it was reborn? If that's the case, doesn't that mean that the Devil Clan in Dark North Mountain also has a martial god?" This news had a huge impact on Granny Long, and she was filled with anxiety. She only wanted to report this news to martial god Luo Shui immediately. Ji Tianxing quickly waved his hand and explained, "Granny Long, don't worry too much. The primogenitor demon god has just been reborn, and its strength is still very weak. It's impossible for it to recover to the martial god realm. However, I estimate that it has at least recovered to the crossing calamity realm and is not far from the martial sage realm. After all, it is the primogenitor of the Devil Clan, a former god. It shouldn't take long for it to recover to the martial god realm. You still have to report this matter to the Divine Master and let him make the decision." Granny Long was slightly relieved, and said with a worried expression, "In ancient times, when the primogenitor demon god was at its peak, its strength definitely surpassed the martial god realm. If it recuperates in Dark North Mountain, it will probably recover to the martial god realm in 8 to 10 years. If that's the case, Dark North Mountain will have the capital to contend with the 3 divine kingdoms. No wonder Dark North Mountain is so arrogant, daring to sneak into the divine kingdoms and destroy Lanfeng City as a warning." By now, Granny Long had completely understood the situation. She knew that she was powerless to solve this matter, so she was prepared to report this information to martial god Luo Shui. "Tianxing, There's no time to lose. I'll report this to the Divine Master now. Wait here for a moment. After I'm done, I'll purify the blood skull. After saying that, Granny Long got up and left the study. She entered the secret room and used a secret technique to report the news. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow stayed in the study and waited patiently. After an hour, Granny Long finished reporting and returned to the secret room. Ji Tianxing saw her grave expression and asked, "Granny Long, what did the Divine Master say?" "The Divine Master already knows. She has her own decision. We just have to wait for orders," Granny Long replied in a low voice. Then, she took out an ice blue box from her interspatial ring and placed it on the table in front of her. This palm-sized box was the shrunken ice crystal coffin. A blood-red skeleton lay quietly in the ice crystal coffin, looking nothing out of the ordinary. "Tianxing, you can cast your technique now." Granny Long waved her hand and sent a majestic dharmic power into the ice crystal coffin. Chapter 1737. Ji Tianxing reached out and opened the lid of the crystal coffin. He stood beside the crystal coffin and carefully observed the blood skeleton inside for a moment. The blood skeleton lay motionless on the ground. Its whole body flickered with a dark red light and emitted a powerful evil aura. Ji Tianxing raised his palms and silently activated the power of the heaven-mending orb. 2 beams of holy white light were released and injected into the crystal coffin. Immediately, the blood skeleton was enveloped by the holy white light. Countless streams of blood-red air gushed out of its body and quickly dissipated under the purification of the white light. The blood skeleton was originally sealed. Now that its demon aura and power were rapidly dissipating, it was immediately awakened. It struggled with all its might, and its body shook violently. Blood-red flames lit up in its sunken eye sockets. Seeing this, Granny Long was on guard. She was afraid that it would rush out of the crystal coffin and attack people. However, it turned out that she was worried for nothing. The holy white light enveloped the blood skeleton. No matter how it struggled, it couldn't break free. As time passed, more and more blood and demon aura gushed out of its body. Its power was also quickly dissipating. After a short 100 breaths, the lower half of its body changed from blood red to a normal grayish-white color. After another 15 minutes, the demon aura on its upper body completely disappeared. The scarlet flames in its eyes also extinguished. The entire blood skeleton's demon aura and blood aura had disappeared. It had become a lifeless gray skeleton. Only then did Ji Tianxing stop and withdraw the holy white light. "All right, Yu Wei's body has been purified. She can be buried in peace." Hearing this, Granny Long released her divine sense and carefully examined Yu Wei's body. After confirming that the body was normal and didn't contain any demon aura, a gratified expression appeared on her face. "Tianxing, your methods are indeed unimaginable. Yu Wei's body has been refined for thousands of years. The demon aura has long been deeply ingrained in it. Even I couldn't get rid of it. You actually purified Yu Wei's body in such a short time. It's simply incredible." As she spoke, Granny Long waved her hand and closed the lid of the crystal coffin. "Now that I've finally completed the task given by the Divine Lord, I'll bury Yu Wei's body today. I hope she can also reincarnate smoothly." After that, Granny Long shrunk the crystal coffin countless times and put it away. 3 days later, Yu Wei's funeral was held on Luotian Mountain. Yu Wei's body was buried in the back of the mountain, in a very quiet place where no one would disturb her. Granny Long presided over the funeral, which was attended by several oracles and many disciples of God. Although the funeral was relatively simple, the atmosphere was solemn and solemn. It could be considered as an explanation and comfort for Yu Wei. After the funeral ended, the Luotian Mountain returned to its peaceful state. In the next few days, Granny Long and the oracles were busy with official business. According to the orders of the Luoshui martial god, the divine envoys had to supervise the various empires to search for traces of the demon race's activities within their borders. Once the demons were discovered, the empires could surround and kill them without asking for any reason. In addition, the various empires also followed the orders of the Luoshui martial god and sent their elite armies to the northern border. The defense of the northern border of the Divine Kingdom was getting stronger day by day, especially in the area adjacent to the North Underworld Mountain, where a tight and powerful defense line had been established. All signs indicated that the Luoshui Divine Kingdom would not compromise with the North Underworld Mountain. War might come soon. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow returned to their respective rooms and went into seclusion to cultivate. The previous events had made the two realize that the demons in the North Underworld Mountain were restless. It would not be long before the peace of the Shunwu continent was broken, and the situation would become chaotic. If chaos were to come, they would need to have enough strength to settle down, and only then would it be possible to kill the devil race. Unknowingly, half a month passed. Ji Tianxing had been in seclusion for 15 days, and his strength had finally reached the peak of the 9th level of the primordial spirit realm. Unfortunately, he could not sense the aura of a heavenly tribulation, and there was still a long time before he could break through to the tribulation transcendence realm. Yun Yarrow's strength had also increased greatly, and she had reached the peak of perfection. She could already sense the aura of a heavenly tribulation, and it would probably arrive within a month. On the morning of the 16th day, the Black Hawk and the Golden Dragon came to the doors of the two secret rooms and knocked on the doors to wake up Yun Yarrow and Ji Tianxing. "Master, Granny Long has sent someone to summon all the God Apostles to the Great Council Hall. She has something important to announce." "Master Ji, Granny Long has ordered." When Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow heard the news, they ended their cultivation and opened their eyes. "Granny Long is summoning everyone to the Great Council Hall? Is there something important? Is it related to the demons in the North Underworld Mountain?" Ji Tianxing furrowed his brows in doubt as he secretly speculated. With a heart full of doubt and anticipation, he got up and walked out of the secret room and entered the room. Yun Yarrow had just finished her cultivation and was about to stand up from the throne when she suddenly felt her vision blur. She staggered and almost fell to the ground. A strange feeling suddenly surged up from her abdomen, causing her face to turn pale, and she could not help but retch twice. Fortunately, the uncomfortable feeling disappeared in a flash. She immediately returned to normal. Subconsciously, she touched her aching abdomen and murmured to herself, "Strange, I've already refined the longevity divine pearl. Both my body and soul have been strengthened. Why do I feel uncomfortable all of a sudden? Could it be that the heavenly tribulation is affecting me negatively?" A tinge of doubt and worry flashed across her eyes. Ji Tianxing's voice came from outside the secret room. He was calling for her. Therefore, she suppressed the doubt in her heart and put it aside. She quickly got up and walked out of the secret room. After a while, the two of them left the Cloud Water Palace together and rushed to the Great Council Hall. When the two of them arrived at the Great Council Hall, the sun was rising and the sun was shining brightly. Two teams of majestic guards in golden armor were lined up on the steps outside the Great Council Hall. They looked very solemn and dignified. When Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow stepped into the Great Council Hall, they saw that the other 8 God Apostles had already arrived and were standing quietly in the Great Council Hall. On the throne in the north of the Great Council Hall, Grandma Long, who was dressed in splendid clothes, sat upright. Her face and aura were noble and dignified. As for the other God Apostles, they had already left the Luotian Mountain to deal with the affairs of the various empires. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow entered the Great Council Hall. After bowing to Grandma Long, they stood on the left and right sides of the Great Council Hall, facing each other. When Grandma Long saw that everyone was present, she said in a solemn tone, "Today, I have gathered everyone here to announce an important news. As early as half a month ago, I received news that the Heaven Extinction God Nation had already sent an envoy to the Luotian Mountain. Just now, the envoy from the Heaven Extinction God Nation sent a message saying that they are about to arrive at the Luotian Mountain. I don't know why the Heaven Extinction God Nation suddenly sent an envoy to visit." Chapter 1738. Among the 3 divine nations, Tianju Divine Nation was the most powerful. This was something that everyone knew. All the disciples of God in the hall knew this very well. The relationship between Luoshui Divine Nation and Tianju Divine Nation wasn't close, but they weren't hostile either. Tianju Divine Nation had sent a delegation to visit Luotian Mountain. This was an exchange between the 2 divine nations, sacred and solemn. Luo Shui divine nation had to treat it with caution. Granny Long had gathered everyone to announce this news, to let everyone know the importance of this matter, to prevent any mistakes. Granny Long had already given the order to the guards and maids of Luotian Mountain. At this moment, the guards were already dressed majestically, setting up a ceremonial array at the peak of the mountain. The maids had also prepared flower baskets and musical instruments to welcome the arrival of Tianju Divine Nation's delegation. Granny Long, Ji Tianxing and the rest waited in the hall for an hour. At this moment, a colorful streamer appeared in the sky, flying over from the horizon as fast as lightning. Following that dazzling streamer, there was a majestic aura that swept over from the sky. The guards on the peak of Luotian Mountain were immediately alarmed, and they all turned to look at the sky. A flying boat that was hundreds of meters long was wrapped in the colorful flowing light. The flying boat was gilded with gold, and it looked like a lifelike dragon, looking very sacred and noble. On the left and right sides of the dragon-shaped flying boat, there were two mysterious emblems, which was the symbol of Tianju Divine Nation. The guards of Luotian Mountain immediately understood that it was Tianju Divine Nation's flying boat. A guard captain quickly ran into the meeting hall to report the news to Granny Long, reporting to Granny Long, Tianju Divine Nation's delegation has arrived. Granny Long also noticed the movement in the sky, and felt a powerful aura. She immediately stood up and ordered the god's disciples, everyone, follow me to welcome the Heaven Extinction Divine Nation's diplomatic mission. After saying that, she led the 10 god disciples out of the hall, and came to the square outside the hall. Everyone came out of the hall, and stood in the spacious square. At the same time, Tianju Divine Nation's flying boat arrived above Luotian Mountain, and slowly descended. When they got closer, everyone could clearly see the style of the flying boat and the emblem of the Heaven Absolute Divine Nation. When the flying boat descended to a height of 1,000 feet above the ground, it was put away with a flash of brilliance. Then, 4 powerhouses with different figures appeared. The leader was a tall and sturdy old man with white hair and beard. This old man was at the 8th stage of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. He wore a dark golden robe, and his thin face had a dignified and cold temperament. Following closely behind him was a young man in his 30s. He was only at the 7th level of the Essence Spirit realm. The young man was dressed in a blue robe. He was tall and straight, and there was a hint of arrogance between his eyebrows. Apart from the old man and the young man, the other 2 were middle-aged experts in the Crossing Calamity realm. They wore black armor and were obviously the accompanying guards. Seeing this, Granny Long and the rest of the god's disciples were stunned. Then, a weird expression appeared on their faces. This is the diplomatic mission of the Heaven Extinction Divine Nation? Why do I feel like something is wrong? Why are there only 4 people in a diplomatic mission? And 2 of them are guards. The Heaven Extinction Divine Nation only sent 2 people, 1 old and 1 young, to visit the Luotian Mountain. Isn't this too sloppy? How dare they call it a diplomatic mission with just 2 people? The god's disciples were discussing secretly as they sized up the people from the Heaven Extinction Divine Nation. After a while, the 4 emissaries from the Heaven Extinction Divine Nation landed in the square outside the hall. Hundreds of guards and maidservants stood in the square, forming a straight path in the middle to welcome the arrival of the 4 emissaries. The guards held swords and spears as they bowed in unison. The maidservants played musical instruments and scattered colorful flowers with baskets of flowers. The white-haired old man and the blue-robed young man walked across the square calmly and came before Granny Long. Although Granny Long was a little worried, she did not show it. She looked at them solemnly and bowed. The Luotian Mountain welcomes the emissaries from the Heaven Extinction Divine Nation. The white-haired old man and the blue-robed young man bowed in return and said calmly, "The second guardian of the Heaven Extinction Mountain, Bai Qing, is here with God's disciple, Meng Fei." Hearing this, everyone knew the identity of the white-haired old man. He was the second guardian of the Heaven Extinction Mountain. As for the blue-robed young man, he was one of the God's disciples of the Heaven Extinction Mountain. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yarrow looked at each other and saw the doubts in each other's eyes. Yi Qingluo and Lu Xiaomeng looked at each other and could not help but discuss with each other. The people from the Heaven Extinction Divine Nation are too insincere, right? They said they would send a diplomatic mission, but there are only 2 of them. Moreover, they are not guardian yang of the Heaven Extinction Mountain, nor the number 1 god's disciple, Huang Qi. Yi Qingluo said as she curled her lips. Lu Xiaomeng nodded in agreement and said, "In my opinion, the Heaven Extinction Divine Nation is looking down on us. They did not take this matter to heart and just found 2 people to deal with it. I don't know what these 2 fellows want to do by coming all the way to the Luotian Mountain in the name of a diplomatic mission." Yi Qingluo rolled her eyes and asked on a whim, "Xiaomeng, do you think these 2 are here to propose marriage? For example, that Meng Fei, he has taken a fancy to a female disciple of our Luotian Mountain, so he specially came." Cough cough. Lu Xiaomeng was stunned and almost choked on her saliva. "Senior Sister Qingluo, why did the people from the Heaven Extinction Divine Nation come to our Luotian Divine Nation to propose marriage? Is there something wrong with his brain? Besides, the only female disciples who participated in the Divine Kingdom exchange were you, me, and eldest Senior Sister. Senior Sister already has a husband, and only you and I are not married yet. Who do you think Meng Fei will take a fancy to?" Yi Qingluo revealed a mischievous smile and quietly extended a finger, pointing at Lu Xiaomeng. Lu Xiaomeng was embarrassed and her cheeks turned red. She spat and ignored Yi Qingluo. At this time, Granny Long and Bai Qing finished their small talk and led Bai Qing and Meng Fei to the conference hall. The 2 accompanying black-armored guards remained outside the door of the conference hall. Ji Tianxing, Yun Yarrow, and the rest of the god's disciples followed them into the conference hall. Soon, Bai Qing and Granny Long took their seats in the conference hall. Granny Long sat on the main seat in the north, and Bai Qing sat on the main seat on the left. Meng Fei stood behind him. As for Ji Tianxing, Yun Yarrow, and the rest, they stood in 2 rows in the conference hall. After both parties sat down, Granny Long asked directly, "Guardian Bai, the 2 of you came all the way to the Luotian Mountain with great effort. I guess you must have a heavy responsibility, right?" Granny Long's words sounded polite on the surface, but in fact, they were sarcastic.